Hello everyone, I know you are going to use this video for falling asleep, so before that, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know where you are from. Also, what time is it? I should have known better. I should have turned around and walked away the second he flashed his badge, but I didn't. I didn't because, like most people, I thought I could trust the uniform. That mistake, one small decision, would turn my life into a waking nightmare. It all started on a rainy Tuesday, just a few months ago. It was the kind of evening that makes you want to stay in bed, tucked under warm blankets, and forget the world outside. I had been working late, a few extra hours at the office, to get ahead of the looming deadlines. The city streets were slick with rain, reflecting the harsh glare of streetlights like broken glass. My car's wipers fought a losing battle against the downpour, and my headlights barely cut through the haze. I should have been paying more attention to the road, but instead, my mind was wrapped up in the usual worries: the mortgage, the bills, the stress. My gaze drifted lazily to the rearview mirror. That's when I saw him. At first, it didn't register. Just a figure in my mirror, too far behind to be of concern. But then, as I rounded a corner, I saw his headlights flicker. He'd turned the corner after me. I shrugged it off. There were always cars behind me on the road, especially late at night. But then the figure didn't fade. The headlights grew closer, until they were practically on my tail. I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck standing up. Something wasn't right. My foot hovered over the gas pedal, but I didn't want to race through the rain, especially on these winding streets. Instead, I kept my speed steady, pretending not to notice the car that had been trailing me for what felt like forever. Then, as if on cue, the siren blared. At first, I didn't believe it. This wasn't the kind of area where you'd get pulled over for speeding, especially not on a rainy Tuesday night. But there it was again, a flash of red and blue in the mirror. I glanced at the speedometer, but I wasn't speeding. I hadn't even been going fast enough for it to warrant a stop. My pulse quickened. I pulled over to the side of the road, hesitant, confused. My hands tightened around the steering wheel. The car behind me came to a stop, the sirens cutting off, leaving only the sound of the rain pelting against the roof of my car. A figure approached my window. I rolled it down, my heart pounding in my chest, unsure of what to expect. The man was tall, his uniform dark, and his face stern but not unfriendly. A police officer, or so it seemed. He flashed a badge at me, a gold shield that glinted in the dim light. "Good evening, ma'am," he said, his voice deep, almost soothing. "I'm Officer Daniels. You know why I stopped you?" I shook my head, trying to calm my nerves. "No, officer. I wasn't speeding or anything." He nodded slowly, his eyes scanning my face. "Well, you were swerving a bit back there. You might be tired. Why don't you step out of the car and let's get you checked out, just to be safe." I felt a strange tightness in my chest. Something wasn't right, but I couldn't quite place it. "Are you sure?" I asked, my voice a little shaky. "I haven't been drinking or anything. I've just had a long day." Officer Daniels smiled then, a tight, professional smile that seemed too practiced. "I understand. Just a precaution." "Mom, I'll make it quick." I hesitated, but it seemed harmless enough. Maybe it was the exhaustion talking. Or maybe I just didn't want to argue with someone who had the authority of a police officer behind him. I unlocked the car door and stepped out. As soon as my feet hit the wet pavement, I felt a shiver run down my spine. The air was colder than I had expected, and I quickly pulled my coat tighter around me. Daniels was already walking toward the front of my car, his eyes scanning the road behind me, the streetlights casting strange shadows. I couldn't help but glance at the car that had been following me. It was empty now, the lights off. But then, I saw something else. Something that sent a ripple of panic through me. The officer's hand was reaching for his belt, and I saw the faint outline of a gun. A wave of dread washed over me. I had been in enough tight situations to recognize when things were spiraling out of control. The officer turned back to face me, his gaze now fixed, unnervingly intense. "Ma'am," he said, his voice cold now, "I need you to come with me." I froze, a surge of fear making my breath catch in my throat. "What? Why? I'm not sure I understand." But he was already stepping closer, his posture rigid, his expression unreadable. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be," he said, his hand still hovering near his gun. My instincts screamed at me to run, but my feet felt like they were glued to the spot. Everything inside me told me this wasn't right, but I couldn't seem to move. "I don't want any trouble," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "I just want to go home." His eyes narrowed. "Then come with me. You can explain everything there." Before I could protest, he grabbed my arm, his grip firm, cold. A surge of adrenaline hit me. I tried to yank away, but his hand tightened, pulling me toward the blacked out SUV parked a little further down the road. Something inside me snapped. I had to get away. I pulled harder, managing to break free from his grip for a split second. That's when I saw it. The thing that froze my blood. The badge. It wasn't real. I blinked, my mind racing to process what I had seen. The badge. It had been wrong, the letters twisted in a way I hadn't noticed before. The insignia was wrong. Before I could take another step, he grabbed me again, but this time I didn't wait. I kicked. Hard, right into his shin. He stumbled, and for a moment, it looked like he was going to collapse. But then, his expression shifted. His eyes went wild. "You shouldn't have done that," he growled, his voice now dangerous. My heart pounded in my ears, and I backed away slowly, my hands trembling as I fumbled for my phone. I needed to call the police. I needed help. But he was too fast. Before I could even dial, he lunged forward, grabbing my wrist with terrifying force, twisting it behind my back. "You made this harder than it had to be," he hissed into my ear. I struggled, my breath coming in shallow gasps, my thoughts spinning. He wasn't a cop. That was clear now. But who was he? What did he want with me? I couldn't let him take me. I had to fight back. And somehow I found the strength to do it. I twisted my body in a way I never thought possible, slamming my elbow into his ribs. He grunted, but didn't release his grip. I kicked again, harder this time, right at his knee, and finally he let go. For a moment, I was free, but I didn't run. Not yet. I turned to face him, heart racing, fear coursing through my veins. And then I saw it, his face. It wasn't just a man in a fake cop uniform. It was someone I recognized, someone I had known, and thought I had forgotten. A name flashed through my mind, like a bad dream I hadn't been able to shake. And in that moment, everything I thought I knew about this man, and about myself, crumbled. I hadn't just been pulled over. I had been lured here. It's not supposed to happen to you. You've heard the stories. You know what people say when they talk about strange encounters on lonely roads. The kinds of stories that get whispered in dark corners or told over campfires. Stories about the people who never come back. It's easy to laugh them off when you're safe at home, sitting on your couch, surrounded by people who love you. It's easy to think it will never be you. But that's the thing about horror. It always happens when you least expect it. When you're alone, when the world is silent, and the darkness feels a little thicker than usual. I never thought I'd be the one in the story. Until the night I met him. I was driving home, just past midnight. The roads were empty, stretching out into nothing, the trees on either side forming black silhouettes against the dark sky. I had made this drive countless times before, but that night, something felt off. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up, though I couldn't tell you why. Maybe it was the strange quietness of the night, or how the headlights of my car seemed to illuminate more of the road than I was used to. Then I saw him. At first, he was just a shadow on the side of the road, standing still. His figure was tall, slightly hunched over, and as I got closer, I could see the shape of a man in a uniform. My heart skipped a beat. I assumed it was a cop. A patrol car parked a little ways up the road, its blue lights flickering in the distance, barely visible. He was probably pulling someone over. I slowed down, not wanting to disturb the officer, but he stepped forward, blocking the road. I hit the brakes, startled, and the tires screeched against the pavement. The man raised his hand in a gesture that I took as a command to stop. "Can I help you?" I called out from inside my car, my voice a little more nervous than I wanted it to be. He didn't respond right away. Instead, he took a step closer, his figure looming larger in the dim light of my headlights. His uniform looked a little off, too stiff, too immaculate, almost like it was a costume. The badge on his chest gleamed faintly, but there was something about the way it caught the light that seemed wrong. "Do you need help?" he asked, his voice deep, almost gravelly. I squinted, trying to make out his face, but the shadows were too thick. The only thing I could see clearly was his eyes, pale blue, almost icy in the way they reflected the headlights. They seemed to pierce through me, and for a moment, I forgot how to breathe. "No, I'm fine," I said, my voice suddenly small. His lips twitched into what might have been a smile, though it didn't reach his eyes. "I'm going to need you to step out of the car." I froze. Something wasn't right. My gut told me to drive off, but there was a part of me, a stupid, trusting part, that thought maybe he was just a cop doing his job. "Why?" He leaned forward slightly, his face coming into view, and that's when I saw it. The unsettling way his eyes shifted, like they were searching for something in me. His face was pale, far too pale for someone who'd been standing outside in the cold for any length of time. His lips were cracked, and his jawline looked sharp, almost too sharp. The uniform was too crisp, the kind of crispness you'd expect from a costume rather than real, worn clothing. "I'm going to need to search your car," he said again, more forcefully this time. "For your safety." I felt my heart race. "No, thank you," I replied, shaking my head. I could feel the sweat beading on my forehead despite the chill in the air. "I'm fine. I don't need any help." The man didn't move. He just stood there, his eyes never leaving mine. The silence between us stretched, suffocating, and for a brief moment, I thought I heard something behind me. Something moving in the trees. And that's when I realized it. The blue lights of the patrol car I'd seen earlier. They were gone. The road was empty. There were no other cars, no lights, no sound except the beating of my own heart. I glanced back at the man. His eyes were still on me. I shifted my car into reverse without thinking, my foot slamming onto the gas pedal. The engine roared as I backed up, my eyes never leaving him. The man didn't even flinch. He just stood there, unmoving, as if he knew exactly what I was going to do. I didn't look away until my car was far enough away that I could put it in drive again. I didn't stop to check if he was still standing there. I floored the accelerator, my hands gripping the wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. But even as I sped away, my mind was racing. That man, that cop, he hadn't been real. Had he? I tried to shake it off. I convinced myself that I'd just been startled. Maybe I'd seen things. Maybe I'd been too tired, or maybe it was just some weird prank. But no matter how many times I tried to rationalize it, I couldn't get the image of his face out of my head. His eyes, pale, too pale. His uniform, too stiff. The way his lips had moved when he spoke, like it wasn't quite right. It was like he wasn't a man at all, but something else. When I reached the next town, I pulled over at a gas station. I was exhausted, shaken, and just needed to stop for a moment to gather myself. As I pumped gas into my car, I glanced around, trying to distract myself from what had just happened. That's when I saw it. The cop car. It was parked in front of the station, completely empty, its lights still flickering. But it wasn't the same car. It was the exact same model. But there was something different about it, something I couldn't place. I turned back to my car, my heart pounding in my chest, when I saw the shadow of a figure standing by the door of the station, watching me. The hairs on my neck stood up again. It was him. The cop. He was staring at me through the glass of the station, his icy eyes still fixed on mine. My breath caught in my throat, but this time something was different. This time, I could see him more clearly. His uniform wasn't just off. It was wrong in a way I couldn't explain. The buttons were twisted, the seams were frayed, and there was something about the way it hung on his frame that felt unnatural. My pulse was racing. I didn't know what to do. Then he started walking toward me. But he didn't walk like a man. He moved. No, glided. Across the pavement, his steps unnervingly smooth. No footsteps, just the sound of the wind. I threw the nozzle into the gas tank and scrambled into my car, slamming the door shut behind me. I didn't look back as I drove off, not even once. I couldn't. I don't know what happened that night. But I'll tell you this, I haven't seen him again. Not yet. But I still feel his eyes on me sometimes. And when I close my eyes, I hear that voice. The voice that told me he was a cop. He wasn't. And I think, maybe, he never was. It's funny how quickly something can change. How a familiar road, one you've driven 100 times, can transform into something unrecognizable. I thought I was imagining things the first time it happened. Just a fluke, a weird moment of fear. Something my mind cooked up to make sense of a strange encounter. But by the time I was sitting in my car again, hands trembling on the wheel, I realized it wasn't just my imagination. That night, after the gas station incident, I couldn't stop thinking about him. The cop. The man who had blocked my path, who had spoken in that strange, cold voice, who had followed me even after I'd driven away. His eyes, pale, unsettling, haunted me. The whole drive home, I kept glancing in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see the headlights of a patrol car following me. But there was nothing, only the dark highway stretching out behind me like an endless void. When I pulled into my driveway, I convinced myself it was over. I'd driven through the town, left it behind, and there was no way he could still be out there. I was safe. I should have listened to the feeling in my gut, the one that had been clawing at me ever since I saw him. The next night I went out again. I know, it was stupid. But I had to. I needed to prove to myself that I wasn't losing my mind. I wasn't being followed. I had to be sure. The road was just as empty as it had been the night before. The wind was light, the trees swaying slightly, their branches creaking as if they were whispering secrets. The only sound was the hum of my car's engine and the soft flicker of the headlights cutting through the darkness. That's when I heard it. A voice. It wasn't loud, but it was unmistakable, low, calm, almost soothing. The kind of voice you'd expect from someone who wanted you to trust them. "You're not safe here." I froze. I looked around, my heart leaping in my chest. The voice wasn't coming from inside the car. It was coming from somewhere outside, from somewhere in the trees. I slammed on the brakes, the tires screeching against the pavement as I whipped the wheel to the right, trying to get a better look. There was nothing, just the same empty stretch of road. But the voice, it lingered in my ears. I shook my head, trying to clear the fog in my mind. I had to be hearing things. It had to be the wind or the trees creaking. But the more I tried to rationalize it, the clearer the voice became. "You're not safe here," it repeated. This time it sounded closer. It was him, the cop. My hands shook as I slowly turned the wheel, my foot pressing the gas pedal as I sped down the road, hoping to get out of whatever nightmare I had fallen into. I glanced in the rearview mirror again, but this time there were no headlights. no car behind me. But then I heard something else. A sound, faint at first, but unmistakable, a steady rhythm. It was footsteps. Heavy footsteps, dragging across the road behind me. They were slow, but deliberate, like the person was pacing. Waiting, I turned to look, and there, standing in the middle of the road, was him. The cop. But this time, he wasn't standing still. He was moving toward me, his footsteps echoing in the silence of the night. I slammed my foot down harder on the gas. The tires screeched again, and I could feel the engine straining beneath me as I pushed the car faster, trying to escape. But even as I sped away, the sound of those footsteps, the slow, deliberate steps of someone who wasn't running but walking, unhurried, as though they had all the time in the world, followed me. The voice returned. "You're not safe here." I didn't dare look in the mirror. I couldn't. I was terrified that if I did, I'd see him right behind me, watching me with those pale, cold eyes. But as the minutes dragged on, and I reached the edge of the town, the footsteps faded. The voice stopped. I let out a shaky breath, and my hands, still gripping the wheel, began to loosen. My heartbeat was still racing, but I told myself it was over. He was gone. I pulled into a small convenience store just outside town, my chest tight with panic. I wasn't sure what to do next. I wanted to call anyone, but I didn't even know what I would say. "Hey, I think I'm being followed by a cop who isn't a cop, and he keeps telling me I'm not safe." No one would believe me. But when I stepped out of the car, I froze. There, standing under the flickering light of the store's neon sign, was the man, the cop, his eyes locked onto mine from across the lot. He didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there watching me. I backed away toward my car, panic bubbling in my chest. But as I fumbled with the keys in my hand, I heard his voice again, this time softer, more insistent. "You're not safe here," he whispered. And this time, it wasn't just his voice. It was in my mind, the words swirling through my thoughts, repeating over and over like a chant. I didn't know how he was doing it, how he was inside my head, speaking to me when he wasn't near, but I couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't stay in this town. I had to leave. I got back into my car, slammed the door, and tore out of the parking lot. This time, I didn't look in the rearview mirror. I couldn't. I didn't want to know if he was still there, if he was watching me as I sped away into the night. I don't know if I'll ever be safe again. But I know one thing for sure. The cop isn't just following me anymore. He's inside my head. I've never been someone who scares easily. At least, that's what I thought about myself. I used to pride myself on how well I could handle stress, how calmly I could think in a crisis. But after that night, I began to question everything. Every noise, every shadow, every fleeting movement felt like it was connected to him. The cop. The one who wasn't a cop. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I could see his pale face, his cold, unreadable eyes staring back at me. I could hear his voice in my head, that chilling repetition. "You're not safe here." I could feel the weight of his presence, like he was in the room with me, watching me even when I was awake. I spent hours on the internet, trying to make sense of what had happened. But there was nothing. No reports of strange cops or weird encounters on the highway. No explanations. It was like he didn't even exist outside of my experience. I wanted to tell someone, anyone. I wanted to pick up the phone and call the police, but how could I? What would I even say? "Hey, I think a man who pretended to be a cop is following me. He tells me I'm not safe." And now, I hear his voice in my head. They'd think I was losing my mind, so I did what anyone would do. I tried to move on. I went back to my normal routine. I had to. I had bills to pay, groceries to buy, a job to keep. It was hard to concentrate, though. Every time I got in my car, I found myself looking over my shoulder, scanning the mirrors for headlights. for signs that he was there, that something wasn't right. The days blurred into one another. It was like I was living in a fog. I couldn't shake the feeling that he was still out there, waiting, watching. Then, one evening, as I drove home from work, it happened again. I hadn't been paying attention at first, too caught up in my thoughts, but then it hit me. The same eerie silence. The same feeling that something was wrong. I glanced into the rearview mirror and froze. There he was. The cop. I could barely make out his face in the dim light of the setting sun, but his eyes, they were unmistakable. That pale, dead stare fixed on me. He was driving a car now. The same black sedan like before. I panicked. My heart raced, and my foot slammed down on the gas pedal, my car surging forward into the night. I didn't look back. But then, as I sped down the road, the strangest thing happened. The passenger seat, which had been empty just a second ago, was suddenly filled. I didn't see him get in. I didn't hear the door open. But there, in the dim light of the dashboard, was the cop, sitting quietly next to me. I could feel his presence, the coldness that radiated from him like an icy wind. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to. His mere existence in the car with me was enough to send my pulse into overdrive. I couldn't breathe. I stared straight ahead, gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles ached. I tried to stay calm, to think, but all I could focus on was him, sitting there, motionless, his eyes fixed forward as if he were just another passenger. But he wasn't. He was a stranger. A threat. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask him what the hell he was doing in my car. But I couldn't make a sound. My throat was tight like it had closed up entirely. The only sound in the car was the hum of the engine and the faint, almost imperceptible noise of his breathing. I dared to glance at him. His eyes were still empty, still cold. He wasn't blinking. He wasn't moving. He was just staring ahead. His face unreadable. That's when I noticed something that made my stomach drop. His uniform was wrong. The fabric didn't look like anything a real cop would wear. It was dark, but not quite right. Too dark, too stiff. It was as if he was wearing an old costume, a cheap replica of a uniform, but it still managed to make him look official. I turned my head back to the road, my foot pressed harder on the gas. I couldn't focus. I couldn't think. But then, just as suddenly as he had appeared, the presence beside me vanished. I glanced to the side again. The seat was empty. The cop was gone. I looked around, heart racing, but there was nothing. No sign of him. No trace of him in the car. It was as though he had never been there. But I knew he had. And the worst part, he didn't even need to touch me. He didn't need to say a word. All he had to do was be there. Just his presence was enough to freeze me in place, to fill me with an overwhelming sense of dread that I couldn't shake. I don't know how he does it. I don't know how he keeps getting in my head, but he's always there. Watching. Waiting. I can feel him even now, and I don't know how much longer I can take it. The moment I pulled into my driveway, I didn't even bother turning off the engine. I sat there in my car, staring at the front door of my house, my hands gripping the steering wheel like a lifeline. Every fiber of my being was telling me to go inside, to just breathe, to try to forget what had just happened, but I couldn't. I couldn't let it go. It wasn't just the man, the cop, who was haunting me anymore. It was the feeling of being watched, that persistent sensation of someone in the shadows, just out of sight, waiting for me to make a mistake. It was suffocating, and I could feel the walls of my mind closing in on me. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "You're losing it," I told myself. "It's just stress. It's just a bad day. You'll be fine." But even as the words left my mouth, I didn't believe them. Before I could talk myself out of it, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I fumbled to pull it out, my heart thumping louder as I saw the unknown number flash across the screen. I stared at it, my pulse quickening. This was it, wasn't it? He had found me again. The cop was trying to reach me. Maybe he knew where I lived now. Maybe he was going to show up at my door next. I took a breath and answered. Hello. There was a long, heavy pause on the other end of the line. My skin crawled, and then the voice. You're not safe. It was him. I knew it instantly. That cold, detached tone. I couldn't speak. The words were stuck in my throat. My mind was racing, but there was only one thought that kept running through my head. How the hell does he have my number? Another pause. You don't remember, do you? The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I tried to swallow the lump in my throat, forcing myself to speak. What are you talking about? A slight chuckle came from the other end. It wasn't a laugh. It was something else. Something darker. I've been watching you for a long time, he said. You don't even realize it yet, but you've been marked. You've been chosen. I recoiled, my heart pounding in my chest. The words felt like a physical weight pressing down on me, suffocating me. What do you want from me? I asked, barely managing to get the words out. I want you to stay away from the highway, he said, his voice taking on an almost casual tone. I want you to stop driving at night, but I know you won't. You'll keep going. You'll keep making the same mistakes. My blood ran cold. How did he know? How could he possibly know what I was doing, what I had been doing? But I couldn't think about that. I had to focus. I had to get away from this. What do you mean? I demanded. What is this about? Why me? The line went silent for a moment. You'll understand soon enough, he said cryptically. It's always the ones who don't believe, the ones who think they're untouchable, who end up being the most vulnerable. They don't realize that the real danger isn't always what's in front of them. Sometimes it's what's lurking in the dark. I felt a cold chill sweep over me. I glanced at the dark silhouette of my house in the distance, the windows reflecting the faint glow of the streetlight. The shadows seemed to stretch out longer than they should, creeping toward me like they were alive. Who are you? I asked, my voice trembling. What do you want from me? But before I could get another word in, the line went dead. The silence that followed was deafening. I sat there frozen, staring at the phone in my hand. My mind was racing. My thoughts were a blur, every part of me screaming for an explanation, for some kind of clarity. But there was nothing. Nothing but that empty, quiet phone call and the lingering fear that I couldn't escape. I tried to steady my breathing. It's just a prank. I thought, it's just some sick joke, someone messing with me. But deep down I knew it wasn't. It wasn't a joke. It wasn't a prank. And that terrified me more than anything else. I couldn't sit there forever. I had to move. I had to do something. So, against my better judgment, I turned off the car, opened the door, and stepped out. The air was cold. The kind of cold that seeps into your bones and refuses to let go. I hugged my coat tighter around me as I made my way toward the front door. But before I could reach the handle, my phone buzzed again. It was him. I almost didn't answer, but I couldn't stop myself. I had to. You think you're safe? The voice came through the speaker, low and threatening. But you're wrong. It's already too late. He's coming for you. I froze. My blood ran cold as the words sank in. What do you mean? Who's coming? The voice let out a soft, eerie laugh. You'll see soon enough. The game's just begun. Before I could respond, the line went dead again. I stood there, my mind racing, my breath shallow and panicked. I looked around, feeling the weight of the night press in on me. And then something in the distance caught my eye. A car. It was parked just a few houses down, its headlights casting a harsh glow on the street. I could make out the shape of a figure sitting inside, but it was too far away to make out any details. But I knew who it was, and the realization hit me like a punch to the gut. He wasn't just watching me anymore. He was close. Way too close. I turned around quickly, my heart pounding in my chest. I ran toward the front door, fumbling with the keys in my hands. The fear was overwhelming, choking me. I was trapped. And it was only a matter of time before he got to me. I didn't dare look back as I fumbled with the key to my front door, my hands shaking so violently that it took far longer than it should have. The streetlights outside cast long shadows across the pavement, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something, or someone, was just beyond those shadows, lurking, watching. Finally, I heard the familiar click of the door unlocking, and I pushed it open, practically throwing myself inside. I slammed the door shut behind me, the sound echoing through the quiet house. I locked it, twice. For a moment, I just stood there in the dark hallway, breathing heavily, my chest heaving. I could still hear the distant hum of the car's engine, the low rumble that seemed to vibrate in the pit of my stomach. But I couldn't see anything through the windows. No figures, no headlights, just the dark void of the street outside. I hesitated. Should I check the windows? Should I call the police? But then I remembered what the man had said. He was the police, or at least that's what he had claimed. Was this some twisted form of intimidation? Or was there something more to it? I shook my head, trying to clear the thoughts swirling in my mind. I couldn't let myself spiral. I couldn't let fear take control. But I couldn't deny what was happening. That sense of being hunted, of being watched, it was so real. I stepped into the living room, glancing around at the familiar surroundings. Everything seemed just as it should be. My couch, my coffee table, the framed photos on the wall. Nothing looked out of place. And yet, I felt it, the tension in the air, the unease that made every corner of the room seem foreign, every shadow a potential threat. The house was quiet, too quiet. I grabbed my phone again, hoping for some semblance of control, maybe a text from a friend or a family member that would distract me from the growing dread. But there was nothing, no messages, no missed calls. It was as though the world had stopped moving. And then it came, the faint sound of something tapping against the window. I froze. It was so soft at first, I thought it might have been my imagination. But then it came again, a quick, rhythmic tapping, like someone's finger lightly drumming against the glass. I wasn't imagining it. My heart slammed into my chest as I slowly turned toward the window. The curtains were drawn, but I knew exactly what was out there. I could feel it. The presence, that malevolent force waiting just beyond the glass. I couldn't look. I couldn't make myself go to the window, but I couldn't stay here, paralyzed by fear either. I turned toward the door. I needed to do something. Anything. I grabbed my keys from the kitchen counter and shoved them into my pocket. I had to leave. I had to get out of this house before whatever was out there found its way in. But before I could take another step, my phone rang again, the unknown number. My throat went dry, my hand trembling as I reached for the phone. "Hello," I answered, my voice barely above a whisper. For a moment, there was nothing but silence on the other end. Then the voice. "You're not listening, are you?" It was the same cold, emotionless tone. The same voice that had haunted me since the first call. "I told you," he continued, "you're not safe here." I swallowed hard, my mind racing for something to say, something to break the tension, but there was nothing. I couldn't even think straight. I don't understand," I stammered. "What do you want from me?" The voice laughed, a low, hollow sound that sent a chill down my spine. "I told you already. You've been chosen." I felt a lump form in my throat, the fear threatening to choke me. Chosen for what? What does that mean? But instead of answering, he said something else, something that made the blood run cold in my veins. "Do you hear that?" I froze, my eyes darting around the room. I couldn't hear anything, only the distant hum of the car engine outside. "What?" I asked, panic creeping into my voice. He didn't respond. Instead, there was a long, unnerving silence, and then suddenly, a loud bang. It was so close, I felt it in my bones. The walls of the house seemed to shake, the sound of something heavy hitting the door reverberating through my skull. I jumped back, my heart hammering in my chest. I rushed to the door, flinging open the blinds and peering outside. Nothing. The street was empty, not a soul in sight. The car was gone. I felt the weight of the silence press in around me again, but it wasn't comforting, it was suffocating. Then, without warning, the phone went dead. I dropped it, my hands still shaking as I stared at the empty space in front of me. What the hell was happening? I didn't have time to think. I didn't have time to process. I ran to the back door, heart racing, every nerve in my body screaming that I needed to get out. But as I reached for the handle, the phone buzzed again. I stopped. My heart dropped into my stomach. But I didn't pick it up this time. I couldn't. I couldn't risk it. The presence was too close. I turned the handle, flinging the door open wide, and then I heard it again. A tap, soft at first. Then louder, coming from inside the house. The sound reverberated through my chest like a drumbeat. Each tap a strike against my very sanity. It came from within the house, not from the door, not from the windows. Inside. The silence that followed was suffocating, as if the world had stopped breathing. I turned, slowly, my heart pounding louder than the tap had been. The living room stretched before me, empty and unchanged. The shadows in the corners seemed deeper now, as if they were growing. The familiar feel of the house was gone, replaced by something strange, something wrong. I took a step forward, my breath shallow, hesitant. My legs felt weak, like they might give out beneath me. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to flee, but I couldn't. Not yet. I had to know what was happening. The house was quiet once more, but the tap wasn't done. It came again, closer this time, and then, again, even closer. I could feel it now. Someone, something, was in the house with me. A presence that I couldn't see but that I could feel. It was in the walls, the floors, the very air that surrounded me. I backed away, slowly, inching toward the hallway that led to the back door. My fingers brushed against the walls, the cold surface sending a jolt through me. The house creaked. A groan of wood, of something ancient and heavy moving above me. I glanced up at the ceiling. Nothing. I couldn't take it anymore. I bolted for the back door. My feet hit the floor hard, the thudding echoing through the house as I ran. But just as my hand gripped the handle, the tap came again. It was right behind me, right in the hallway. I spun around, heart hammering in my chest. Nothing. The hallway stretched out in front of me, dimly lit by the faint light from the kitchen. The silence pressed in again, thick and oppressive. The air seemed to grow heavier, colder. I felt as if I were being suffocated by it, unable to escape. And then I saw it. A figure. It was standing at the end of the hallway, barely visible in the shadows. For a second, I thought I might be imagining it. Maybe my mind was playing tricks on me, but no. The figure was real. It was tall, too tall to be human. Standing perfectly still, its head cocked at an unnatural angle. The figure was dressed in dark clothing, but the details were obscured by the shadows. The thing, if it was even a thing, wasn't moving, just standing there, staring at me. The tap came again, but this time it wasn't from the walls. It was from the figure's fingers. Each tap was deliberate, slow, like a countdown. Tap, tap, tap. I froze, unable to look away. The air was thick with tension. It felt like time itself had stopped. And then, just as suddenly as it appeared, the figure moved. But it didn't walk. It glided, sliding silently across the floor, its movements jerky, unnatural, as if it were both part of the house and yet separate from it. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I could only watch as it came closer, closer, each tap echoing louder in my mind than in the room. And then it stopped. Right in front of me. I could see it now, its face. It was human, or at least it looked human at first. But as my eyes focused on it, something was wrong. The face was gaunt, hollowed out, the skin stretched tight over bone. Its eyes were black, as dark and empty as the night sky, without a trace of white in them. The thing's lips twitched, a grotesque smile forming at the edges of its mouth. "I'm here," it whispered, the voice dry and hoarse. It didn't sound like a person at all, more like the scraping of nails across stone. "I've been waiting for you." I took a step back, my mind racing for some kind of response, but the words caught in my throat. And then, without warning, the thing lunged at me, its hands stretching out toward me, fingers crooked like claws. I screamed and ducked, throwing myself to the side, slamming into the wall as I scrambled to my feet. It was too fast. It was everywhere. The thing was on top of me before I could even think to run, but it didn't touch me. Instead, it whispered again, "I'm here because of you." My blood ran cold. I couldn't move, couldn't think. All I could do was stare at it, feeling the walls close in on me. The air was thick with its presence, suffocating me. And then, as suddenly as it had appeared, it was gone. I blinked. The hallway was empty. I was alone. I stumbled backward, my heart pounding so loud I could feel it in my throat. My body was shaking, my legs weak beneath me, as I slowly sank to the floor. Was I losing my mind? Was I hallucinating? Had it all been in my head? No, it had been real. The tap, the figure, the voice, all real. I couldn't explain it, couldn't process it, but I knew one thing for sure. Whatever that thing was, it wasn't finished with me, and I had no idea what it wanted. The house felt different now. Not in the usual way, like an eerie, abandoned structure or a place frozen in time. No, this felt far worse. It felt alive, almost as if the house itself had shifted in the wake of the thing that had been in the hallway with me. The air was thicker, heavier, pressing against my chest with each breath I took. The walls, once familiar, now seemed to close in around me, their cracks and creaks louder than before. Each noise unsettling in its own right. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Even when I closed my eyes, I could feel the weight of unseen eyes on me, waiting, observing, following. I stood there, frozen, in the center of the hallway. My mind was still spinning from what had just happened. The grotesque figure vanishing like a bad dream. Yet I knew it hadn't been a dream. There was no logical explanation for what I'd seen or heard. No rational way to make sense of it. I didn't know how long I stood there, but the silence eventually broke like a cold wind slicing through a still night. The sound of a knock, a soft, almost tentative rap on the door. I froze again. The knock echoed through the hallway, hollow and unnatural. Not the knock of a friendly neighbor or even a stranger. No, this was something else entirely. A sound that shouldn't have been there at all. I hadn't been expecting anyone. I hadn't even heard the car pull up. Another knock, this one louder, more insistent. My heart skipped in my chest. The sound reverberated through the house, growing louder as though the door itself were somehow amplifying it. I was rooted to the spot, my legs refusing to move. My mind unable to process the absurdity of it. Who could it be? What was going on? I had to go to the door. I couldn't let the silence stretch out any longer. Couldn't leave whatever. It was on the other side, lingering outside my thoughts. Every step I took toward the door felt like a mile, each one heavier than the last. The knocking was deafening now, as if whoever, or whatever, was outside had found a way to tap into the very core of my fear. My hands were trembling by the time I reached the door, my fingers brushing against the cold handle. For a moment, I hesitated. I could feel something pulling at me, urging me to turn away, to leave the door unanswered. But the knocking kept coming, sharp and insistent. I turned the handle. The door swung open, and there, standing in the dim light of the porch, was a man. At first glance, he seemed normal enough. He wore a dark, neatly pressed uniform, the kind you'd expect from a police officer. His face was clean-shaven, sharp features highlighted by the moonlight, his dark eyes focused on me with an intensity I hadn't expected. "Good evening, Ma'am," he said, his voice smooth, low, almost soothing. "I'm Officer Williams with the local precinct. I'm here to ask you a few questions." The words hit me like a ton of bricks, freezing me in place. A cop? At this hour? I stared at him, unable to move or speak. He didn't seem dangerous, not in the way that would set off alarm bells. He was just there. But the question still lingered. Why? Why now? And why had he come alone? I tried to force myself to speak, but my throat was tight. The words stuck somewhere just out of reach. "Ma'am." The officer stepped forward slightly, his hand outstretched. "I need to ask you some questions about recent events in the area." "Recent events?" I managed to croak out. His eyes shifted to the side briefly, as if considering his next words. "Yes, we've had a few reports of suspicious activity in this neighborhood, and I'm doing a routine check. It's just protocol." Something about the way he said it, just protocol, sent a chill down my spine. There was something off about him, but I couldn't put my finger on it. I should have felt reassured. I should have been able to trust him. He was an officer, after all, right? But there was a quiet nagging in the back of my mind, like a voice warning me that I was making a mistake. The officer's eyes never wavered. They stayed locked on mine, calculating, as if waiting for something. I glanced over my shoulder into the house, the shadows creeping in every corner. The silence had returned, but it was different now, suffocating, as though the house itself were holding its breath, waiting for me to make a decision. "Is everything okay?" The officer asked, his voice still smooth, but with an edge of something unsettling in it. I nodded quickly, my gaze snapping back to him. "Yes, everything's fine." I couldn't remember when I had stopped breathing. "I'm just a little confused," I finally said, my voice shaky. "Why are you here? So late?" The officer didn't answer right away. He just stood there, his hand still extended, a slight smile forming at the corners of his mouth. It was unsettling, that smile. Something about it didn't sit right, but again, I couldn't quite place why. "I understand this might be a bit strange, but it's for your safety, ma'am," he said, his tone soft but firm. "We've been tracking a suspect in the area. I just need a few moments of your time to ensure your safety." There it was again, the vague answer. A suspect. But what did that even mean? Before I could protest, he stepped forward, closing the distance between us, his eyes gleaming in the dim light of the porch. And that's when I noticed it. A badge. But not the kind you'd expect. It wasn't shiny or crisp like a real officer's. It was dull, almost weathered, like it had been through too many years of misuse. A piece of metal that looked more like a costume than anything official. That's when it clicked. Something was wrong. Something was horribly wrong. But before I could step back, before I could shut the door, the officer grabbed my arm with unnatural strength. His fingers dug into my skin, and I felt an electric jolt of panic surge through me. "Mom," he whispered, his voice suddenly sharp, his smile widening. "You don't want to make this difficult." His grip tightened, and just like that, I knew. He wasn't a cop, and he was not here to protect me. The cold grip around my arm burned through the fabric of my sleeve, sending a sharp sting through my skin. I tried to pull away, but his fingers dug deeper, pulling me closer to him with an unnatural force. My heart raced in my chest, every instinct screaming to fight back, but my body betrayed me, paralyzed by fear. "Let go of me." I managed to gasp, my voice high, pitched and desperate. I tugged harder, but it was like trying to break free from iron. The officer, no. The man who wasn't a cop, didn't flinch. His eyes remained locked on mine, but now there was no softness, no friendliness in them. They were cold, hollow, like empty wells pulling me in, suffocating me with their depths. "Don't make a scene," he murmured, his voice smooth but laced with a cold, unyielding edge. "This won't hurt if you cooperate." My pulse thundered in my ears, drowning out everything else. Every fiber of my being screamed for escape, for safety. But the doorframe was too narrow, the night too thick with shadows. I couldn't outrun him. The air in the hallway was stifling, as if the walls themselves were closing in on me. I fought back against the panic that was clawing at my chest, forcing myself to think. I had to get free. I had to survive. I racked my brain for anything I could use, anything to break his hold. My eyes darted to the small table near the door, a heavy vase, a set of keys, a small metal lamp. None of them would be enough to fight off this stranger, this monster in disguise. But they were all I had. I grabbed the nearest thing, a small glass lamp, and swung it at him with all my might. The impact shattered the lamp against his arm, but to my horror, he didn't even flinch. Instead, his lips curled into a tight, cruel smile. "You really shouldn't have done that," he said, his voice barely a whisper. With a sickening snap, he twisted my arm, forcing me back into the hallway with the violent shove. The world spun around me as I stumbled backward, the weight of his grip now impossibly heavy. I crashed into the wall, my head slamming against the cold plaster. The sharp pain flashed through my skull, momentarily blurring my vision. For a moment, I thought I might black out. But before I could collect myself, his hand was on my throat, tightening like a vice. "Please, don't." I gasped, my breath hitching, but his grip only tightened in response. The world around me started to go dark at the edges, the blood in my veins growing cold, but I couldn't let it end like this. I couldn't. With everything I had left, I dug my nails into his hand, scratching, fighting with every ounce of strength I could summon. My vision wavered, my body trembling, but I didn't stop. He snarled, "That's not going to help you." Just when I thought I might lose consciousness, when my lungs felt like they were being crushed, I saw something. Movement. In the corner of my eye. The door. It was still open. The streetlight outside was a faint, distant beacon of safety. I didn't think. I didn't even process it. I drove my knee into his abdomen as hard as I could, forcing him back just enough to give me a fraction of space. With all the force I could muster, I shoved him away, my hands slipping from his grip as I made a break for the door. I could hear his growl behind me, low and menacing, but I didn't dare look back. My only focus was the open door, the possibility of escape. I flew out the door and down the porch steps, my bare feet hitting the cold ground, the sound of his footsteps echoing behind me, too close, too fast. I didn't stop. I didn't care if I was running in the wrong direction. I didn't care about anything except putting as much distance between me and that thing as I possibly could. I rounded the corner of the house, breath ragged, but the sound of his pursuit was relentless, growing louder with each passing second. My legs were burning, my mind screaming that I couldn't keep this up for much longer. But then, something changed. The sound of his footsteps faltered. I risked a quick glance over my shoulder, my heart leaping into my throat as I saw him, still standing at the front door. His figure was dark, barely visible in the dim light, but there was no mistaking the predatory stance he took. He was waiting. A twisted, knowing smile crossed his face, but he didn't move. The silence stretched on, thick and suffocating, and I could barely hear my own breathing over the pounding of my heart. I had escaped for now. But I didn't trust this silence. I knew he wasn't done with me. He was still out there, watching, waiting, and I had a horrible feeling that this was only just beginning. I didn't stop running. Not then, not for a second. Each step I took felt like a race against something far worse than mere exhaustion. My feet pounded the cold asphalt of the empty street, the chill of the night biting into my skin. But I didn't care. There was only one thought in my mind: keep going, keep moving, just don't stop. The streetlights overhead flickered as if in sympathy with my panic, casting long shadows that stretched toward me like claws. It wasn't long before I realized I had no idea where I was going. The neighborhood was unfamiliar, the houses unfamiliar. I couldn't even tell if I was moving toward anything that resembled safety. I risked a quick glance over my shoulder. He was still standing in front of the house, just as I had seen him. But now the air was different. He wasn't alone anymore. A figure emerged from the shadows, slipping out of the darkness like a ghost. I froze for a split second. I thought it was just my mind playing tricks on me, a symptom of the adrenaline coursing through my veins. But no. There he was, standing in the middle of the road, tall and broad-shouldered. The dim light revealed his face for just a moment. A sharp, angular jaw, a flat expression. But there was something off about him. Something unsettling. I didn't stop to think. I turned and ran, not caring where I was going anymore. Every muscle in my body screamed for rest, for respite, but I had learned something that night. Rest would be the end of me. I rounded a corner, barely noticing the blur of street signs as they passed. My breath came in sharp, ragged bursts, my heart thundering in my chest. I had no idea how long I had been running, how far I had gone, but when I turned another corner, I was hit with an overwhelming sense of dread. The street before me was empty. No cars, no people, not a single light in sight. Just more houses that seemed too still, too quiet, as though the entire world had fallen asleep except for me. Then I heard it, a soft scrape, like boots on gravel, just behind me. My body went cold. I didn't dare look back. I didn't have to. I knew it was him. The man. The so-called cop. The one who wasn't a cop. I pushed myself harder, my legs feeling like lead, but my mind screamed for me to keep running, to keep putting distance between myself and that thing. But it wasn't just my feet that had started to drag. The weight of the situation had begun to settle in, the pressure of what was happening closing in on me. I risked a glance over my shoulder, too quick, too panicked. I couldn't see him anymore. But that didn't mean he wasn't there. I pushed myself forward, desperate, but the street stretched out in front of me like an endless labyrinth. No turns, no alleys, just rows of houses that seemed to close in on me, trapping me in this nightmare. Was this real? Was I still in my neighborhood? Or had I wandered into some other world where nothing made sense anymore? A car's headlights appeared ahead, slicing through the darkness. A real car. It was a sign, a chance for help. Maybe. My heart leaped in my chest, but just as quickly as the hope flared, it flickered and died. The car slowed as it approached me, but it didn't stop. The headlights washed over me, and I could see the silhouette of the driver, his face obscured by the glare, but his posture was unnerving. He was sitting too still, not moving. It was a van. The car's brake lights flickered on, but instead of coming to a full stop, the vehicle just rolled forward, slow and deliberate. It wasn't just passing by, it was moving toward me. I froze. Panic surged through me. This couldn't be happening. The van's engine hummed, the tires on the road the only sound now. The night swallowed up everything else. My legs trembled as I took a step back, but it was too late. The van stopped just a few feet in front of me. The door slid open. I couldn't move. A man stepped out from the van. His face obscured by a dark hood, he looked familiar. I blinked, disoriented, but it didn't take long for the realization to hit me like a punch to the gut. It was him, the same man who had been at my door, the man who wasn't a cop. Knew. My voice trembled. Stay away from me. The man said nothing. He simply took a step forward. My breath caught in my throat, but I took another step back, my legs giving way beneath me. I couldn't back away any farther. The van was blocking my escape. I was trapped. This was it. I braced myself for whatever he would do next, but the man stopped in his tracks. A sharp, cold laugh echoed from behind me. The cop, or whatever he was, had caught up with me. I turned, my body shaking from fear, only to find him standing just a few feet away, watching me with those same hollow eyes. The man in the van didn't speak. Neither did the one standing behind me. But the silence between them was loud, deafening, suffocating. I didn't know what they wanted, but I knew one thing for certain: I wasn't going to make it out of this without a fight. But as I braced myself, my hand trembling as I reached for whatever I could use to defend myself, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't in control anymore. And whatever they were planning, it was far worse than anything I could ever imagine. The cold air pressed in on me from all sides, the tightness in my chest growing with each passing second. I felt trapped between the van and the man standing behind me. Every instinct told me to run, but where could I go? The streets were empty, the houses dark. There was no one out here to help. The man in the van didn't move, but his presence was undeniable. He loomed over me like a shadow, his figure growing more imposing with every heartbeat. His face was hidden, but I could feel his eyes on me, cold and calculating, like a predator waiting for the right moment to strike. The man behind me, the cop, took another step forward. His footsteps were slow and deliberate, echoing in the silence of the night. I couldn't breathe. My legs trembled beneath me, but I couldn't afford to show fear. I had to fight. I had to do something. But what? What was I supposed to do against two men who seemed to know every move I made? "You should have stayed inside," the cop said, his voice low and rough. It was almost as if he were trying to coax me into surrendering. "You don't know what you're dealing with." I clenched my fists, my nails digging into the skin of my palms. I wasn't going to let them take me. I wasn't going to let them win. The man in the van finally spoke, his voice grating and harsh. "You really think you can fight us?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. My breath came in short, panicked gasps, my mind racing for a way out. The man behind me, the cop, stepped even closer, his face now just inches from mine. I could smell the faint scent of something stale and metallic on him, like old blood or rusted iron. It made my stomach churn. "Do you know what happens to people like you?" he asked. His voice so calm it sent chills down my spine. "They think they're smarter than they are. They think they can outrun it. But there's no escape." I didn't understand what he was talking about. What was he trying to do? Why was he doing this? "Let me go," I yelled, my voice breaking. My heart was hammering in my chest, but I refused to back down. I had to show them I wasn't afraid. The cop's lips curled into a smile, one that didn't reach his eyes. "You don't get to decide that. You never did." Before I could react, the man in the van moved, stepping toward me with a predatory grace. I felt a cold wave of terror wash over me as he closed the distance. I was completely surrounded. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out something small, shiny, metallic, a knife. I took an instinctive step back, but I hit the van, the cold metal of it pressing into my back. There was nowhere left to go. The cop spoke again, his voice oddly soothing, like a snake trying to lull its prey into a false sense of security. "It's better this way, you know. You don't want to know what happens if you try to run again." The man in the van took another step forward, the knife gleaming in his hand. My pulse raced, my stomach turning with nausea. I had no way out, no way to stop this. But then, just as the knife came closer to my chest, something strange happened. The cop stopped. The man in the van froze, the blade hovering inches from my skin. I didn't understand what was happening. It didn't make sense. And then I heard it. A sound that sent a shock of terror through me, louder than anything I'd heard before. A door slamming open, followed by the screech of tires. The sound of a car speeding down the street. "Get in," a voice shouted, distant but unmistakable. I didn't hesitate. I dove toward the sound of the voice, pushing past the man in the van, ignoring the sharp pain that shot through my shoulder as I collided with him. I heard him grunt, but I didn't stop. I stumbled forward, barely able to keep my balance, but I heard the car engine roaring behind me. The tires screeched again, and I saw headlights shining through the night. I turned to look, and for the briefest moment, I saw a figure in the driver's seat. A woman. She was shouting something, but I couldn't make it out. I reached for the car door, my fingers trembling as I tried to pull it open. "Get in. Now," she screamed. I didn't need any more encouragement. I threw myself inside, slamming the door shut behind me. The car lurched forward, speeding away from the two men. I didn't dare look back. I couldn't. I just held my breath, my body trembling, as the car tore through the empty streets. We were safe, for now. But I knew one thing for certain. This wasn't over. I didn't dare ask who the woman was. My heart still pounded in my chest, my breath ragged and uneven as I clung to the seat, staring straight ahead. The streetlights flickered past us like ghosts, casting long shadows across the empty road. I had no idea where we were going or who this person was who had come to my rescue. My head was spinning, the adrenaline still pumping through my veins. I was numb, yet hyper-aware of everything around me. The car's engine roared beneath us, the tires biting into the road as it swerved around corners with reckless abandon. "You okay?" The woman's voice broke through the silence. I glanced over at her, a wave of confusion washing over me. She was focused on the road, her hands gripping the wheel tightly. She wasn't dressed like someone who belonged in this part of town. She looked out of place. I think so. I stammered, still struggling to find the words. "Who are you? What's going on?" She didn't answer right away. She simply kept her eyes fixed on the road, her face set in a grim expression. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she spoke. "I know this is all insane," she said, her voice low but steady. "But right now, we need to focus on getting you to safety. I'll explain everything once we're clear." Her words did nothing to calm the storm raging inside me. There was so much I didn't understand. Who were these men? What did they want from me? And why had this woman suddenly appeared out of nowhere to help me? I glanced back over my shoulder, half expecting to see the cop's car behind us or the man in the van following in pursuit. But the streets were empty. No one was chasing us. Yet, my pulse quickened again, the cold, clammy feeling returning to my skin. I wasn't sure if I felt safer or more terrified in that moment. I had no idea what this woman had gotten me into. "You're not safe," she said suddenly, as though reading my thoughts. "Not yet, but we're getting closer. Just hold on." The way she said it made my stomach drop. "Closer to what? Closer to what?" I finally asked, my voice shaking. "What's happening? Who are those men?" Her grip tightened on the wheel, her knuckles turning white. She didn't look at me, but I saw her jaw tighten. "They were part of a group," she said, her voice colder now. "A very dangerous group, and you're in deeper than you realize." I couldn't wrap my mind around what she was saying. "A group? What do you mean?" They're not what they say they are," she continued, her eyes flicking to the rearview mirror before she focused back on the road. "That man who pretended to be a cop, he's one of them. They've been following you, watching you." A chill ran down my spine. "But why? Why me?" She let out a bitter laugh, though there was no humor in it. "It's not about you, not specifically. It's about what you know." I blinked, not understanding. "What do you mean, what I know?" She glanced over at me, her expression dark. "They think you know something. Something dangerous." The words hung in the air like a heavy fog, thick with tension and unspoken fears. I felt my throat tighten. I didn't know anything, did I? "Are you saying they're after me because of something I know?" She nodded, her lips pressed into a thin line. "That's right. And that's why I'm here." "Why are you here?" I asked, a suspicion creeping into my voice. "Who are you really?" For the first time, she turned to look at me, her eyes intense and full of warning. "You don't get to ask that right now," she snapped. "You just need to trust me." The car veered sharply to the left, the tires screeching as we cut through a narrow alley. The sudden movement jolted me, and I instinctively grabbed the door handle, my heart skipping a beat. "Hold on," she shouted, her voice urgent. We raced down the alley, the tires skimming along the pavement, and I could hear the faint sound of a siren in the distance. My stomach churned. They were still coming. "They're not going to stop," the woman said, her voice barely audible over the roar of the engine. "And neither are we." She pushed the accelerator harder, the car lurching forward as we sped through the winding streets, cutting corners too fast, barely missing parked cars. My eyes flicked from the road to the rearview mirror, watching for any sign of the pursuing vehicles. "Why won't they stop?" I asked, panic rising in my chest. "Because they want you," she said. "And they'll do whatever it takes to get you." I swallowed hard, the words sinking in like a cold, heavy weight. I couldn't breathe. My head spun with the realization of just how deep this went. But before I could say anything else, we heard a screeching noise from behind us. I turned around just in time to see a car, the cop's car, coming around the corner, its headlights blinding in the dark night. "They're getting closer," I whispered, my voice breaking. She didn't answer. The car inched closer, faster now, and my heart raced. I could see the figure behind the wheel. A man wearing dark clothes, his face partially obscured. It was him. It was the cop. I grabbed the seatbelt, my hands shaking as I tried to pull it over my chest. I felt the car surge forward again, pushing us faster, but the cop's car was relentless. It was gaining on us. I could hear the roar of the engine behind us, the sound of tires screeching against asphalt as he pushed it harder, getting closer and closer. "Hold on," the woman said, her eyes now glued to the road ahead. "This is going to get a lot worse before it gets better." A sickening realization hit me. This was no longer just a random encounter. This was bigger than me. Bigger than I ever could have imagined. And no matter how fast we went, no matter how far we ran, I was never going to be able to escape it. I wasn't sure if I wanted to keep running, but I didn't have a choice. The air in the car was thick with tension. My hands clutched the seatbelt, knuckles white as I looked back at the cop's car bearing down on us. The headlights pierced through the dark, growing larger with every passing second. My heart hammered in my chest, the dread in my stomach churning like a vicious storm. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shout. But all I could do was watch as the woman behind the wheel slammed her foot harder on the gas, pushing the car even faster, skidding around corners at terrifying speeds. The streets were narrowing. The buildings on either side of us seemed to close in, towering like silent giants watching this night unfold. The cop's car stayed on our tail, relentless and unyielding, its engine roaring louder with each passing moment. The siren hadn't even gone off yet. He didn't need it. He was just chasing me. I glanced at the woman, trying to read her face, but she remained focused. Her eyes fixed on the road, her jaw set in a grim determination. "Where are we going?" I gasped, barely able to catch my breath. "Somewhere safe," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper, yet there was a coldness to it. She didn't sound like someone who believed there was such a thing as safety. I wanted to scream at her for more information, to demand to know who she was, why she was helping me, but before I could, the car swerved sharply to the left, taking us onto a narrow side street. My stomach lurched as we slammed through the turn, the tires screeching in protest. The cop followed. Of course, he did. He wasn't going to let us slip away that easily. We tore through the alleyways, turning down another street, the road now full of potholes that made the car jump and jerk violently. The woman's hands gripped the wheel with unshakable force, the only thing that seemed to keep her steady. I, on the other hand, was barely holding on. The constant jerking of the car made my head spin, and I felt the heat of panic rising in my chest. But no matter how fast we went, no matter how many turns we took, the cop's car was still behind us. It was as if it was always there, just waiting for us to make a mistake. "Who are they?" I asked again, my voice cracking. "Why are they after me?" The woman didn't answer right away. She just kept driving, her eyes flicking to the rearview mirror. Her lips were pressed tight, her expression unreadable. "They're not the only ones," she said finally, her voice low. "There are more of them out there, watching you." A cold shiver ran down my spine. "More. Much more," she said, her voice tight. "You're not the first person they've gone after, and you won't be the last. But they've been hunting you for months. That's why they've been following you, watching you. They don't care how they get to you. They just want you gone." I didn't understand. "Gone? Why?" "They think you know something, and they're willing to do anything to get it from you." She glanced quickly at me, her face sharp with something like pity. "Whatever it is you've seen, whatever it is they're afraid of, they'll stop at nothing to keep it buried." I felt the blood drain from my face. "I haven't seen anything. I don't know anything. That's the problem." She gritted her teeth, her gaze snapping back to the road. "You don't know what you've seen, but they're terrified you might." I didn't know how to respond to that. My mind raced, trying to grasp what she was telling me, but everything felt like it was slipping through my fingers. I hadn't seen anything, had I? I couldn't think of a single thing that could make anyone so desperate to come after me like this. But then I remembered the van. The man who followed me. The creepy cop who'd approached me at the station. They were all connected. They had to be. Before I could process more, the woman slammed her foot onto the brakes, sending the car screeching to a halt just short of a brick wall. The cop's car, coming hot on our tail, was too close to stop in time. It slammed into the back of us with a deafening crash. I gasped as the impact threw me forward. My seatbelt dug into my chest. But the pain was nothing compared to the sheer terror coursing through me. The woman swore under her breath, her hands jerking the wheel as she fought to regain control of the car. The cop's car hadn't let up. It was still there, still pushing forward. "Hold on," she shouted. Without warning, she yanked the wheel hard to the right, sending us crashing through a chain link fence and onto an abandoned construction site. The car bucked and jolted over uneven ground, but the woman's grip on the wheel never faltered. Behind us, I could hear the cop's car struggling to keep up, the engine revving louder as it tried to navigate the rough terrain. "We have to get out of here," the woman said urgently. "This is our chance. We can't stay here." "Where are we going?" I asked, my voice trembling. "I know a place," she said, her eyes flicking to the rearview mirror once more. "But we don't have much time. They'll be on us in minutes." The woman slammed the accelerator again, the tires screeching as we sped out of the construction site and onto a narrow dirt road. The cop's car was still behind us, but at least for now, we had a bit of a lead. I couldn't breathe. My chest tightened as the weight of everything began to sink in. This wasn't just about a random cop. This wasn't about a misunderstanding. This was something much bigger, something dangerous. And no matter where we went, no matter how far we ran, it felt like there would be no escaping it. I couldn't outrun them. I couldn't hide, because they knew who I was, and they weren't going to stop until they had me. The car lurched and swerved violently as we raced down the dirt road. The night had fallen completely now, the world outside swallowed by inky blackness. Save for the dim lights of the city miles away, and the headlights illuminating the rough path ahead. I could barely focus. My mind was in overdrive, bouncing between the fear pounding in my chest and the desperate need to understand what was happening. Who were these people after me? Why? And why had she, a stranger, suddenly appeared to help? Was she even helping me? The woman's grip on the steering wheel was ironclad, her jaw set tight. She never took her eyes off the road, her focus so intense it almost seemed like she was avoiding looking at me. I knew she was trying to keep us from slipping, but I could sense something else in her. Fear. Fear masked by resolve, but it was there, just below the surface. Why are you helping me? I finally blurted out, my voice hoarse from the tension. Who are you? She didn't answer immediately, the question hanging in the air between us like a heavy fog. Then, in a voice colder than the night outside, she spoke. Because I owe you. Owe me? I asked, my heart skipping a beat. What did that mean? I didn't even know her. She didn't owe me anything. She gave a quick, humorless laugh. You don't remember me, do you? I frowned. No, I don't. Should I? You will, she said cryptically. Eventually. I had no idea what she meant, but there was no time to ask more questions. The cop's car was still tailing us, not far behind, the roar of the engine growing louder with every second. Whoever was in that car was relentless. Whoever was behind this whole thing. They were playing a game I didn't understand, and I was stuck in the middle of it. The woman's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror for a moment, then back to the road. She looked tense, more tense than before. She slammed the brakes without warning, the car screeching to a halt on the side of the road. I grabbed the door handle for support, my stomach lurching. Get out, she ordered sharply, her eyes never leaving the rearview mirror. I stared at her, confused. What? You heard me? Get out. I looked around, wondering if she had lost her mind. We were out in the middle of nowhere, with nothing but dirt and dark trees surrounding us. There was no safe place here, no shelter. But the look on her face told me there was no room for argument. It wasn't an order. It was a demand. I had no choice. I threw open the door, stumbling as I tried to stand on wobbly legs. My heart was still pounding, adrenaline rushing through my veins like wildfire. The woman followed me out quickly, locking the doors behind her. Where are we going? I asked again, panic creeping into my voice. She looked over her shoulder at me and then at the cop's car, which had finally pulled off the main road and was beginning to slow. There was no way it could stop here, but that wasn't the point. The cop wouldn't stop until he had me, and I couldn't run forever. There's a place nearby. It's our only chance, she said, her voice tense. I opened my mouth to argue, to ask what this place was, but she silenced me with a quick shake of her head. I'm not going to let them get you, she said, her voice deadly serious. She turned abruptly, moving swiftly through the dense trees around us. I hesitated for just a moment, looking back at the cop's car, which was now parked several yards away. They had stopped, but it wouldn't be long before they found us. The woman was already disappearing into the woods, and I had no choice but to follow. I ran after her, my breath ragged as the cold night air burned in my lungs. We moved fast, cutting through thick underbrush, the ground uneven beneath our feet. I could hear the sound of footsteps behind me, but I couldn't tell if it was her or something else. Something that was watching us. Something waiting. Minutes passed, each one dragging on like hours. My mind raced, searching for something, anything, to explain what was going on. Then, through the trees, I saw it. A building. Low, squat, hidden from view by the thick foliage around it. At first, I thought it was an old cabin, maybe some sort of abandoned shack. But as we drew closer, I saw that it was more than that. It was too well maintained for something abandoned. The windows were dark, the door was shut tight, and there was something unnerving about it. Here, she said, her voice low but urgent. Inside. Now. I hesitated just a second, a chill crawling down my spine. There was no way I could trust her, not completely, but there was no time to question. The cop was close. Too close. I followed her to the door, and without a word, she opened it, leading me inside. The moment the door clicked shut behind us, the air inside the small, dimly lit room grew thick. The scent of dust mixed with the stale, cold air that seemed to be trapped in the walls. I could hear my breathing, shallow and erratic, as if it were the only sound in the world. The woman didn't wait for me to say anything. She moved swiftly across the room, pulling open a heavy wooden cabinet that looked like it hadn't been touched in years. Behind it, there was a small staircase that led down into darkness. She glanced back at me with an expression I couldn't place. Something like guilt. Maybe regret, but it was gone almost as quickly as it appeared. Down there, she said, her voice just above a whisper. Hurry. I stood frozen for a moment, unsure of what to do. Something about this place, the way she was acting, made my skin crawl. I felt like I was stepping into the heart of a trap, one that had been set long before I arrived. But what choice did I have? I followed her, my footsteps muted on the creaking wooden floor as we descended into the darkness. The air grew colder with each step, and the shadows seemed to close in around me like a living thing, wrapping tighter, suffocating me. At the bottom of the stairs, the space opened up into a small, concrete room. There was a single flickering light above us, casting uneven shadows on the walls. The woman didn't waste time, walking to the far corner of the room and pulling a thick, dust-covered tarp off something large and heavy. I tried to make sense of what I was seeing, but my eyes couldn't quite focus. It was almost like my mind was playing tricks on me, trying to force me to look away. But then she pulled back the last bit of the tarp, and I saw it. A body. Not just any body. It was a man, his face pale, eyes wide open, as if he had died in terror. His clothes were soaked through with what looked like blood, and his hands were clenched tightly around something. A piece of paper. A note. I stumbled back, my heart hammering in my chest. What the hell is this? I gasped, my voice breaking. The woman didn't look at me. She just stared at the body, her eyes cold, distant. He was here before you, she said softly, her voice filled with something I couldn't quite place. He was looking for you. My stomach twisted. What do you mean, looking for me? Who is he? She looked down at the dead man, her jaw tight. He was another one of them. He found me, and he found you. What do you mean, them? I asked, panic rising in my throat. The cop, the woman. Who were they? What did any of this mean? But she didn't answer. She turned away from the body, walking over to a small table in the corner of the room. On it were scattered papers, photographs, and what looked like some kind of journal. She picked up one of the photographs and stared at it for a long time. I approached slowly, still trying to piece everything together in my mind. The room felt colder now, almost suffocating. The walls seemed to be closing in, and I was so overwhelmed with questions that I could hardly breathe. Who are you? I finally asked, my voice shaking. She didn't answer right away, her gaze still fixed on the photo in her hand. Then, with a slow, deliberate motion, she turned and handed it to me. It was a photograph of a man with the same cold, dead eyes as the one on the floor. But this man was different. He wasn't dead in this photo. He was smiling, standing beside someone I recognized. Me. I stared at the image, feeling as though the ground beneath me was about to crack open. It was an old photo, taken years ago, yet there I was, standing beside this stranger, smiling like I knew him. My heart raced. What is this? How do you have this? The woman's eyes were haunted as she met my gaze. That man, he was a part of this. He was here before you, just like the others. And like him, you'll become a part of it too. I didn't understand. None of it made sense. How could I have been part of something so dark, so twisted, without even knowing what was happening? I don't know what you're talking about, I said, my voice tight with fear. What do you want from me? She sighed, her breath shaky. I'm trying to protect you from them. From him. She paused, her eyes flicking to the body on the floor. The cop, he's not who he says he is. He's here for you, and he's dangerous. But it's not just him. She shook her head, as if trying to clear away a memory. There's more. And they've been looking for you for a long time. The words didn't make sense. They didn't fit together. I took a step back, trying to piece together what she was saying, but all I could think about was the cop. The man who had followed me for days. The man who had been so convincing, so certain. But now he wasn't a cop at all. Why me? I whispered, my mind reeling. Why are they after me? The woman's face hardened. You don't remember, do you? You don't remember what happened all those years ago. What you did. I recoiled. What are you talking about? She looked down at the photograph again, her fingers running over the edges, like she was trying to make sense of it too. You'll remember soon enough. But for now, we need to get you out of here. We need to move before they find us. The sense of dread in my gut deepened, spreading through me like a poison. I didn't know who these people were, or why I was involved in any of this. All I knew was that I was trapped, and that I had no way of getting out. The woman grabbed my arm, pulling me toward the stairs. We don't have time. Move. I didn't want to go with her. I didn't trust her, not completely. But there was no choice. No one was coming to help me. I was alone, completely alone. As we reached the top of the stairs, I could hear the sound of the cop's car getting closer. The chase wasn't over. It was only just beginning. The door slammed shut behind us, with a finality that echoed through the narrow hall, the sound of the cop's car still reverberating in my ears. My heart pounded in my chest, my breath coming in short, jagged bursts as I tried to make sense of everything that was happening. But the more I thought about it, the less sense it all made. We moved quickly. The woman's grip on my arm firm but not unkind. She didn't look back at me, her focus trained on the hallway ahead. The dim light above us flickered intermittently, casting long, eerie shadows that seemed to stretch and writhe, as if they were alive. The air felt thick, heavy, and the walls seemed to press in around me, suffocating, as if the house itself was watching us, waiting. Every step I took felt like a step deeper into a nightmare, and no matter how fast we moved, the oppressive weight of it never let up. The woman didn't speak as we moved down the hall, but I could see her hand tremble slightly as she reached for the door at the end of the corridor. She paused before turning the knob, her body tense as though she were listening for something, waiting for something to happen. What's going on? I asked, my voice strained with fear. Who are these people? Who are you? She turned her head slightly, enough to give me a brief glance, but her expression remained unreadable. It doesn't matter who I am. What matters is getting you out of here. You're not safe. The door creaked open, revealing a small, cluttered room filled with maps, papers, and photographs pinned to the walls. The air inside was thick with the smell of old paper, and the dim light from the single bulb hanging from the ceiling barely illuminated the space. Without a word, the woman moved toward the table in the center of the room, where a stack of papers lay. She rifled through them quickly, her eyes darting across each sheet as though searching for something. I stood at the threshold of the room, hesitant. The cold feeling in the pit of my stomach deepened, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking into a trap, one that I had been lured into without even realizing it. What is all this? I asked, my voice rising with a mixture of fear and frustration. What's going on? Why me? Why are they after me? She didn't look up from the papers. You don't remember? Do you? Her voice was soft, almost sorrowful, but there was an edge to it, like she was on the verge of breaking. You did something. Something they want. My mind raced. I tried to dig through the fog in my head, but there was nothing. Nothing that made sense. I had no idea what she was talking about. I hadn't done anything. Had I? I don't know what you mean, I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. I don't remember doing anything. I'm just trying to live my life. I don't know why all this is happening. The woman's fingers tightened around the papers in her hand, crumpling them as she looked up at me. Her eyes were filled with something. Regret, maybe, or fear, but it wasn't directed at me. It was directed at something else. Something larger. Everything's your fault, she said quietly. The words cut through me like a knife, and I felt a pang of coldness in my chest. Before I could respond, the door behind us banged open with a force that made the entire room shake. I spun around, my heart leaping into my throat as the sound of heavy footsteps echoed through the hallway. The cop. He was here. I barely had time to react before the woman pushed me toward the far corner of the room, her hand pressing against my back, urging me to stay quiet. Don't move, she whispered urgently, her breath ragged. Stay low. I crouched down behind a large stack of crates, my pulse hammering in my ears as the cop's footsteps grew louder, closer. The woman pressed her back against the wall, her eyes darting toward the door, as if she were calculating her next move. Who else is in here? The cop's voice rang out, harsh and demanding. He was in the hallway now, just outside the door. His voice, once authoritative, now sounded strained, faintly panicked. The woman didn't answer. She didn't need to. She knew exactly who he was, and so did I. I could hear him moving, his footsteps slow and deliberate, searching. He wasn't looking for us anymore. He was looking for something else. Something he hadn't found yet. And in the silence that followed, I could feel the weight of it. I was caught. There was no escaping this. There was no way out. The cop stepped into the room, his eyes scanning the cluttered space. He didn't see us at first. His gaze passed over the maps, the photographs, and the papers, but he didn't seem to recognize any of it. Then, his eyes landed on the table in the middle of the room. The papers were scattered now, disorganized, a few edges hanging over the edge of the wood. He moved forward, but his hand hovered over the papers, as though unsure which one to pick up first. Where is it? He muttered under his breath. Where's the one with the damn address? The woman's eyes widened, and she clenched her fists. Her body tensed, and I could see the fear in her eyes as she moved ever so slightly. I held my breath, every muscle in my body frozen in place. The cop's fingers hovered above the papers, shaking. Then, something changed. The air felt different, heavier, like an electric charge had built up around us. I couldn't place it at first, but it was unmistakable. A sound, a whisper, barely audible, but growing louder. I turned my head slowly, and that's when I saw it. The shadow, it moved, just at the edge of my vision, slipping behind the cop, curling around the edges of the room like it was waiting for the right moment to strike. The woman's eyes widened in horror. No, she whispered. Not now. Before I could ask what she meant, the cop turned around, his face suddenly contorted in confusion. What the hell is that? He growled. I didn't have time to process what was happening. The shadow shifted, and everything erupted into chaos. The room plunged into darkness. The shadow. No. It was more than just a shadow. Shifted, growing and twisting into something far darker, far more sinister than I could ever have imagined. It wasn't just a shape moving in the corner of my eye. It was something alive, something hungry. The air turned cold, biting, and I could hear the sound of something breathing. Slow, deliberate, like it was savoring every moment. The cop's voice cracked as he swung around, his hand reaching for his sidearm, but he was too slow. The shadow lunged forward with a speed I couldn't comprehend, engulfing him in one swift motion. He let out a strangled scream as he was dragged backward, the sound of his shoes scraping against the floor mixing with a sickening, low growl. I couldn't move. I was frozen, caught between fear and the crushing need to flee, but my legs wouldn't obey. I barely even dared to breathe. The woman beside me was already moving, though. She darted forward, grabbing the edge of the table and pulling it aside with a force that surprised me. She reached for a hidden compartment in the wall, her fingers trembling as she pressed a button. A secret passage. I had no time to question it. As the cop's screams grew louder, now mixed with something more inhuman, the woman pulled me toward the opening. My feet stumbled over the cluttered floor, but her grip was ironclad. She wasn't giving me a choice. I heard a sickening crack, followed by the sound of something tearing, and then silence. "Go," the woman hissed, shoving me through the narrow doorway. I didn't question her. I stumbled into the passage, my chest tight with panic, my mind struggling to grasp what was happening. The air here felt different, thicker, almost suffocating, and the walls were cold to the touch as I pressed my hands against them to steady myself. I didn't look back. I couldn't. There was no telling what waited for me behind. We moved quickly through the passage, the woman's footsteps ahead of me, muffled by the stone walls. My mind was spinning. Too many questions, too many pieces that didn't fit together. I kept thinking about the cop, about his transformation, about the shape in the dark. But one thought kept coming back, clearer than the rest. What the hell had he become? I could feel my heartbeat in my throat, my pulse racing as we turned a corner in the passage, moving further into the unknown. The woman's breath was ragged now, and I could sense her growing desperation. Whatever we were running from, it wasn't just the cop. There was something far worse, something that the cop had been connected to, something older and far more dangerous. The passage seemed endless, stretching on and on through the cold stone. No windows. No light except the small beam from the flashlight the woman carried. The deeper we went, the more the air seemed to vibrate, as though something was pressing in from all sides. "Why are we going down here?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "What is all of this?" The woman didn't respond right away. She stopped abruptly, her back stiff as though she were listening for something. I stopped too, but only because I didn't have a choice. I felt a chill run down my spine, the kind that told you something wasn't right. Something was wrong, too wrong to ignore. Then, finally, she spoke. "I should have told you sooner," she said softly. Her voice, despite the calm tone, held a note of something broken, something unspoken. "But it's too dangerous now. They're everywhere." I looked at her, confusion swirling in my chest. "Ooh. Who's everywhere?" She swallowed hard, clearly struggling to get the words out. "The ones who follow. The ones who were with the cop. They've been tracking you for a long time. You never noticed them." I stared at her, my mind reeling. "What do you mean? Who are they?" The woman closed her eyes for a moment, as though collecting herself. When she opened them again, they were hard, focused, determined. "You were right. I'm not who I said I was. But that doesn't matter anymore. What matters is you. You're in more danger than you can imagine." I felt my throat tighten as I tried to process the words she was saying. I don't understand. What danger? Who are these people? And why are they after me? She stepped closer, her face inches from mine. "They're not people," she whispered. "They never were." My stomach lurched. I felt a sick realization begin to creep into the edges of my mind. The cop, the strange behavior, the whispers in the dark. It was all adding up, but I still couldn't see the full picture. Before I could say anything more, the woman turned, her eyes darting to the end of the tunnel. A low growl echoed from somewhere deeper within the passage. It wasn't like anything I'd heard before. Low, guttural, almost as if it were being forced out of a throat that wasn't meant to make that sound. "They're here," she said, her voice sharp with panic. "Hurry." She grabbed my arm and pulled me forward, running now. My feet barely kept up as I stumbled in the darkness, the growling growing louder. It was closer now, right behind us. "What are they?" I choked out, the words feeling strangled in my throat. "Hunters," she said, voice breaking as we rounded another corner. "They feed on fear. They feed on you." I could feel my chest tightening, my heart racing faster than it ever had. I had to get out. I had to escape. But the shadows were closing in. I didn't know how much longer I could keep running. The passage narrowed, walls closing in on us as we ran. The air grew colder with every step, thicker with the stench of damp stone and something else, something fall. The growl echoed again, deeper this time, reverberating off the walls and sending a shiver of pure terror down my spine. My legs burned, and I could feel the woman's grip on my arm tighten, almost too tight, like she was afraid I might slip away from her. "You need to keep up," she hissed, her voice strained. "They can't get you if you keep moving." I wanted to scream, to demand an explanation, but my voice wouldn't work. My mind was a jumble of half-formed questions, none of which seemed to matter anymore. The only thing that mattered was the sound of that growl, the way it was closing in on us, getting louder, more insistent. What were those things? Hunters. What the hell were we running from? I tried to focus, to push past the fear gripping my chest, but it was impossible. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to stop running, to turn around and fight, but deep down, I knew it wasn't an option. Not against whatever those things were. The woman pulled me faster, her feet barely making a sound on the stone floor. She moved like someone who'd been through this before, who knew the dark passages better than the daylight. I had no choice but to follow. Suddenly, the passage opened up into a larger space, a cavern of some kind. The air in here was even colder, the stone walls slick with moisture. A dim light flickered in the distance, casting shadows that seemed to stretch and writhe, distorting everything in its path. The woman stopped at the edge of the cavern, her body tense. She looked back at me, her face pale, her eyes wide with panic. "Stay close," she warned, her voice barely audible. "Whatever you do, don't make a sound." I swallowed hard, my throat dry, my heart pounding in my chest. The darkness in the cavern felt suffocating, as though it was alive, pressing in on us from all sides. The growling had stopped, but I could still feel it. The weight of it, lurking in the shadows. Then, from the dark, came a whisper. A low, guttural hiss that seemed to slither into my mind, making my skin crawl. "You're not safe here," the voice rasped. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. It wasn't the woman. It wasn't anyone I knew. The voice came again, this time louder, more distinct. "They're coming for you." I looked around frantically, my eyes wide, but there was nothing, just the flickering light, casting strange shapes on the walls. The growl came again, closer this time. It was behind us, creeping through the shadows, its source impossible to pin down. The woman was already moving again, her hand gripping mine as she pulled me through the cavern. We darted past the walls, where the shadows seemed to shift in time with our movement. I couldn't keep my eyes off the darkness. It was as if it was alive, breathing, watching us. "What are they?" I managed to choke out, my voice shaking. "Who are they?" She didn't look at me, her focus entirely on the path ahead. "The hunters," she repeated. "They've been tracking you for months. The cop, he was one of them, but he got too close. He didn't know what they really were. He didn't understand that they feed." Feed. My mind raced, trying to understand the magnitude of her words. But I couldn't make sense of it. The woman's movements grew more frantic, and I could hear her breath catching in her chest, the fear more evident with every passing second. "We're almost there," she whispered, her eyes flickering toward the dark expanse ahead. "Stay close. Don't make a sound." I wanted to scream, to ask more questions, but the words wouldn't come. I could feel my pulse hammering in my ears, my legs aching, but I had no choice but to keep running. Suddenly, the ground beneath us shifted, a low rumble shaking the cavern. The stone trembled, and I stumbled, almost losing my balance. The woman didn't stop. She kept pulling me forward, her eyes wide with terror, as if the ground itself were trying to swallow us whole. And then, from the darkness, something shifted. A shape, dark and massive, almost too large to comprehend, moved at the edge of the light. My breath caught in my throat as I saw it, a figure, impossibly tall, with elongated limbs and a face that wasn't a face at all, just a mass of shifting, blackened shapes, as if something were trying to crawl out of the darkness itself. It opened its mouth. No, it didn't have a mouth, just a gaping, hollow space where its face should have been. A scream, a sound that wasn't even human, ripped through the air, the cavern itself seeming to echo it back at us. The woman shoved me forward, her voice now frantic. "Run! Run!" We didn't have time to think. There was no time to question the things chasing us. We just ran. I could hear it behind us now, the sound of footsteps. Impossibly fast, a heavy, unnatural thud that rattled the walls. The ground was shaking beneath us, and I could feel it. Feel the presence closing in on us, like a weight pressing against my chest, suffocating me. I didn't know where the passage was leading. Didn't know what the hell was happening, but I knew one thing for certain: we weren't going to make it out of here. And, as the shadow drew closer, I realized something terrifying. The hunters weren't after me alone. They were after all of us. I ran until my legs burned, until my chest felt like it would explode with each desperate breath. The woman was pulling me faster, her grip now painful, but I couldn't focus on the pain. All that mattered was the ever-present sound of the hunters, their footsteps growing louder, their growls vibrating through the very air we breathed. We were nearing something. I could feel it. The cavern was narrowing, the walls closing in around us. The light ahead, flickering like a dying flame, was our only hope, the only thing keeping me from losing my mind entirely. The woman didn't say a word now. Her eyes darted around the space, scanning every corner, every shadow, but there was nothing to see. Just endless stone, endless darkness, and the oppressive weight of something hunting us. I dared a glance behind us. It was hard to make out the details, but I could feel it. They were close. There was something wrong with the shadows, something twisted and unnatural. The hunters were there, watching, waiting. Every instinct screamed at me to turn and fight, but I knew it was pointless. I wasn't strong enough to fight them. None of us were. "Where are we going?" I managed to gasp, barely able to speak. My throat was dry, the words scraping painfully against my windpipe. "Don't stop," the woman hissed, her voice barely above a whisper, panic lacing her tone. "We're almost there. You can't stop now." The ground beneath us trembled again, this time stronger, as though something massive had shifted just below us. My heart thudded against my ribcage. I had no idea what was happening, what we were running from, but I knew one thing for sure. I didn't want to find out. The walls were slick now, wet to the touch, and the light ahead was growing stronger, brighter, almost blinding. I could hear something else now, a low hum, like a machine coming to life, its gears grinding in the distance. It felt wrong, out of place in this underground hell. We reached the end of the passage, the stone opening up into a massive chamber. I couldn't see much at first. The light was blinding, the shadows too deep, but as my eyes adjusted, I could make out shapes, faint outlines of structures, something that looked like... No, it couldn't be. A door, The woman pulled me toward it, her face desperate. "There's no time. We need to get through. Now." She reached for something in the wall. There was a strange panel, a glowing rune embedded in the stone, just visible in the half-light. Her fingers brushed over it, muttering something under her breath, too low for me to understand. The rune flared briefly, then dimmed again, but the door remained sealed, its surface cold and unyielding. "Why isn't it?" I started, but she cut me off. "Just wait," she snapped, her eyes scanning the space around us. "They know we're here. We don't have much time before they." The growl came again, louder, closer, followed by the sound of something scraping against the stone. My stomach twisted in horror. I turned toward the sound, heart racing. I could barely make out the figure emerging from the shadows. Tall, impossibly thin, with limbs that stretched too long, reaching for us like claws. I wanted to scream, but my throat was frozen in terror. "They're here?" the woman whispered, her voice trembling. "Stay close." I didn't know what she meant by that. Didn't know why I had to stay close, but I was too scared to ask. I felt her pull me, pushing me toward the door. The thing in the shadows was getting closer, its movements jerky, unnatural. It wasn't like a person, not at all. It was something other, something made of darkness and hunger. Its mouth. A jagged, hollow void, opening wide, sending a chill through the air. The woman stepped back, her face twisted in concentration as she muttered more words. Words I didn't understand, but they felt like a chant, ancient, desperate. "Come on," I thought, "please. Open." The growl intensified, followed by the unmistakable sound of something heavy hitting the ground. Thuds, like boots dragging through wet stone. It was closing in. I couldn't see it clearly, but I could feel its presence behind us, and I knew that if the door didn't open, we were finished. The woman's voice broke through the chaos, sharp and urgent. "Now." With a sudden crack, the door shuddered to life, its stone surface sliding open, revealing a blinding light beyond. Without hesitation, she shoved me forward, and I stumbled through the opening. The moment I crossed the threshold, the door slammed shut behind us with a deafening bang. The air felt different here. Lighter, fresher, and yet wrong, somehow. I turned to look back, but all I saw was a smooth, unbroken wall where the door had once been. The cavern, the hunters, the dark things that had been chasing us. Gone, as if they had never existed. I swallowed hard, trying to make sense of it. Where were we? What had just happened? The woman stood beside me, her back pressed against the stone wall of the new room, her eyes wide with fear. She was breathing heavily, her hands shaking, but she was alive. We were alive. What was that? I asked, my voice shaking with the weight of the experience. What just happened? She didn't answer right away, her gaze distant. Then, after a long pause, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Something is wrong with this place. Something is wrong with you." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. "What do you mean?" I managed to say. She turned to face me, her expression grave. "The moment you crossed that threshold, everything changed. You're not just running from them anymore. You're running from yourself." I stared at her, my mind racing. What was she saying? What was going on? My heart hammered in my chest, and then a realization hit me like a cold wave. I didn't just feel hunted. I felt changed. The air was thick with tension. My pulse thudded in my ears, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I had a moment to stop and breathe. The cold stone walls around me seemed to press inward, enclosing us in a space that was both foreign and claustrophobic. But there was no going back. Whatever had just happened, whatever this place was, held us trapped, and I wasn't sure if it was worse than being hunted by the creatures we'd just escaped. The woman's words echoed in my mind, "You're running from yourself." I couldn't make sense of it. How could I be running from myself? I wasn't even sure what that meant. Was I? Was I losing my mind? I glanced around the room we had entered. It was eerily quiet now, the hum that had vibrated through the cavern gone, leaving only the silence that felt like it was pressing in from all sides. There were no windows, no doors, no exits. Just stone. Dark, cold stone. The woman was still by the wall, her face pale, her eyes wide and fearful. But there was something else there, something I hadn't noticed before. It was in the way her hands trembled slightly, the way she kept glancing nervously at the floor, as though she were waiting for something to emerge from the shadows. "What do you mean, running from myself?" I asked again, my voice coming out quieter than I intended. She didn't meet my eyes immediately. Instead, she took a deep breath and began to pace in small, tight circles. I could see the sweat on her brow now, the frantic energy in her movements. She was losing control, and that wasn't a good sign. "It's not just the hunters," she muttered, more to herself than to me. "Not just the things chasing us. This place, it's like a mirror. A place where things twist, where what you fear most comes to life." I felt my skin prickle with unease. A mirror. What did she mean by that? She looked up at me then, her eyes locking onto mine, sharp and desperate. "The longer we're here, the more distorted we'll become. It feeds on your fear, on your doubts, your insecurities. And once it has you, it won't let go. You'll forget what's real, what's you. It makes you question everything." I took a step back, my chest tightening with growing panic. "So, this place changes us, makes us something else." She nodded slowly, but there was no comfort in her gesture. Only a grave acknowledgement of what she knew all too well. "That's why we can't stay here," she said, voice low and trembling. "We have to find a way out, before it gets us." I swallowed hard, looking around at the barren stone, my mind racing with possibilities. Where was the exit? How could we leave if there was no door? No way out? Where do we even go? I asked, barely able to keep the dread from creeping into my voice. The woman stopped pacing, turning to face me. "You don't get it, do you?" she asked, her tone sharp now. "There is no exit. Not here. Not until you face it." "Face what?" She took a shaky breath, her eyes darting toward the far wall. There, at the edge of the room, stood a dark, reflective surface. A mirror. I hadn't noticed it before. It was large, framed in something ornate but old, almost as if it had been placed there long ago, forgotten in time. I took a step closer, drawn to it despite myself. My reflection in the glass was distorted, like a ripple in water, as if it wasn't quite my own. It was me, but it wasn't. My face was hollow, the eyes too wide, the smile too thin, as though the mirror was trying to twist me into something else. I recoiled, taking a step back. "What is this?" I whispered. The woman's voice was low, almost a whisper. "It's what you have to face. What you are running from." I stared at her, confusion flooding my mind. "What do you mean?" "I don't understand." She was quiet for a long moment before speaking again. "It's not just the hunters that want you. It's yourself. You've been running from something for a long time. And if you don't face it, now, it will consume you." My heart was pounding in my chest, the words feeling like they were clawing at my insides. What was she talking about? Running from myself. The truth. What truth? "You're not just here because of them," she continued, her voice growing more insistent, urgent. "You're here because of what you've done, and what you've tried to forget." I stumbled back, my breath catching in my throat. The mirror seemed to draw me in, my reflection warping and twisting with every passing second. "I didn't do anything," I protested weakly. "I'm not. You are," she interrupted sharply, her eyes wide with fear. "You just haven't realized it yet. Face it. Face what you've been hiding from, or it will destroy you. It's already inside you, and if you don't confront it now..." Her voice trailed off as her gaze flicked to the mirror. I could see her shaking, her own reflection starting to twist and blur. Her face was becoming something other, something that wasn't her at all. My mind raced, panic spiraling. What did I need to face? What had I done? The more I thought about it, the more I realized that I couldn't remember everything. Pieces of my past were missing, shattered fragments that I couldn't quite reach. Was that it? Was that what I had been running from? Suddenly, a loud crack rang out, a jagged line appearing across the surface of the mirror. It spread like a spider's web, and as it did, the reflection of the woman shifted into something wrong, something monstrous. Her reflection grinned, a horrible, wide grin, and the woman screamed, an inhuman sound that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I took a step backward, heart racing. What the hell is happening? But the answer was clear now. I wasn't just running from them. I was running from me. I was frozen in place, my entire body paralyzed by a mix of fear and confusion. The woman's reflection in the shattered mirror twisted grotesquely, her features warping into something inhuman. Her eyes bulged, her lips pulled back into a grin that stretched impossibly wide. The distorted image was mocking her, mocking me like some twisted version of a truth that I wasn't ready to face. "Stop it," I shouted, stepping forward instinctively, as if my words could force the mirror to undo whatever nightmare it had become. But the reflection didn't listen. It only grinned wider, the woman's scream now replaced by a laugh, low, guttural, and sinister. I glanced at the woman beside me, her face pale with terror, her body trembling. She was still staring at the mirror, her hand pressed to her mouth, as if trying to stifle the raw panic that was threatening to consume her. "You need to break it," she said, voice barely above a whisper, her words trembling with fear. "The mirror. You have to break it before it takes you." I didn't understand. What was she talking about? The reflection. It wasn't just distorting her anymore. It was twisting her inside out. It wasn't just a reflection. It was like the mirror was alive, feeding off whatever was deep within us, pulling out the dark parts that we weren't ready to see. "What's happening?" I cried, my voice shaking. She turned toward me then, her expression stricken. "This place, it doesn't just twist things, it exposes them. Your fears, your guilt, your darkest secrets, everything you've tried to bury. It makes them real." I recoiled, her words hitting me like a punch. I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to face whatever was lurking just beyond the edge of my awareness. But there was no turning back now. Whatever had been hidden deep inside me, whatever I had been running from, it was rising to the surface, and there was nowhere to hide. "No, I don't," I stammered, my mind racing, trying to block out the growing image of my own face in the mirror. It wasn't just a reflection anymore. It was me, but not the me I knew. This me was darker, a version twisted by something I couldn't quite comprehend. It was like seeing a stranger's face wearing my skin, and yet I knew it was me. I was the one it was looking at, taunting me, pulling me closer to the edge of the abyss. "Break it," the woman repeated, her voice urgent now, her eyes wide with desperation. "You have to break it before it drags you in, before it becomes you." I didn't know what to do. My hands were shaking as I looked around for something, anything, to shatter the mirror with. There was nothing. No weapons, no tools, no objects to grab onto, just the cold, smooth surface of the mirror and the distorted, mocking version of myself staring back at me. A dark thought crept into my mind, one that I couldn't shake. What if this is me? What if I've always been this thing? The reflection in the mirror seemed to feed off that thought, growing more monstrous with every passing second. My twisted face grinned back at me, its eyes filled with malice. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. My body was locked in place, my gaze glued to the thing that was supposed to be me, but wasn't. Then, a voice whispered in the back of my mind, low and insidious. You're not running from them, not from the creatures, not from the hunters, you're running from yourself. I felt a sharp pang in my chest, like a cold hand tightening around my heart. No, that wasn't possible. It couldn't be. I didn't even know who I was anymore. The memories, my past, felt distant, shattered into fragments that I couldn't grasp. I had no idea what I'd done, what I was running from. But something told me that it wasn't just the creatures out there that wanted to destroy me. I was the monster. The thought hit me like a tidal wave, crashing over me with such force that I stumbled backward. My breath came in ragged gasps as I fought to hold on to the slivers of sanity that were threatening to slip away. I couldn't trust my own mind anymore. The reflection in the mirror was a part of me. It had always been a part of me. The darkness, the fear, the guilt. It had been there from the beginning, lurking beneath the surface, waiting for the moment it could finally consume me. The woman was still pleading, her eyes wide with terror, her voice growing frantic. "You have to break it. You can't let it take you. It'll tear you apart." I couldn't breathe. The air felt thick, suffocating, as if the walls themselves were closing in. I glanced back at the mirror, my own reflection now grinning wider, the eyes hollow and black, devoid of anything human. It was no longer me. It was a version of me that had been twisted into something monstrous by the darkness I had tried so hard to outrun. "I can't," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "You can," she insisted. "You have to! Fight it." In that moment, I felt a surge of something inside me, a spark of clarity amidst the confusion. She was right. I couldn't let this thing, this mirror, define me. I couldn't let it drag me into the abyss where it wanted me to go. With trembling hands, I reached for the jagged stone from the ground that I had been standing on earlier. My fingers gripped the sharp edge, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I moved toward the mirror, every step heavy with dread. But there was something else there too. A flicker of resolve, a stubborn defiance that had always been buried beneath the fear. I swung the stone. The mirror shattered with a deafening crash, the sound reverberating in my ears, splitting the air apart like thunder. The reflection, my reflection, fractured into 1,000 pieces, each shard reflecting a twisted version of myself. The woman cried out behind me, her voice a mix of fear and something else. Relief, maybe. The pieces of the mirror fell to the ground with a dull thud, each one still reflecting bits of the nightmarish image that had held me captive. But something had shifted. The air felt lighter, less suffocating. The pressure that had weighed down on my chest, the feeling that I was trapped, began to lift. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I realized that I was no longer running. I had faced it. Whatever darkness had been lurking inside me, whatever I had tried so desperately to avoid, had been shattered along with the mirror. And now I was free. The shattered pieces of the mirror lay scattered across the floor, glinting in the dim light like jagged fragments of a nightmare. Each shard reflected my face, broken, disjointed. Reminders of the twisted version of myself I had just faced. I had thought that destroying the mirror would end it, that I would be free of whatever horrors it had brought to life. But as the last echo of the glass breaking faded into silence, I felt the weight of the room press down on me with a new kind of heaviness. Something wasn't right. The air felt thicker now, almost suffocating, as though it had absorbed all the dread and malice that had been held in the mirror's reflection. My breath came in shallow gasps, my heart pounding in my chest. The woman, the one who had been urging me to break the mirror, stood frozen, her hands clasped in front of her as if in prayer. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with something I couldn't quite place. Fear, yes, but something else too, something that told me she had seen all of this before. "Is it over?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. It felt stupid to even ask. I should have known. Nothing was ever just over. She didn't answer immediately. She just stared at the shards of glass, her expression unreadable, like she was lost in thought or caught in a trance. I stepped closer, my feet moving on their own accord, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched by something unseen. "It's never over," she finally said, her voice low and heavy. "Not really. Not until it has you. And I don't think it's finished with you yet." The words hit me like a physical blow. My body tensed instinctively, and I stepped back, as though her words had summoned some unseen presence that was now closing in on me. The room seemed to grow darker, the shadows stretching longer as the light flickered above us, casting a dull, yellowish hue over everything. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice trembling. "It was just a reflection. It's gone. I destroyed it." She turned toward me then, her face pale, eyes clouded with an emotion I couldn't place. "You think it was just a reflection? That it was all just in your head?" I didn't answer her. The truth was, I didn't know what to believe anymore. I had thought that smashing the mirror would bring an end to whatever nightmare I had been caught in. But now, standing in the remains of the shattered glass, I realized how wrong I had been. There was something more here, something that went beyond the physical word I had known. "What do we do now?" I asked, the words slipping from my mouth before I could stop them. The woman's gaze flickered to the door, and for the first time, I saw something else in her eyes, a flicker of doubt. "Now we wait." I frowned, my pulse quickening. Wait for what? For it to come? Before I could ask anything else, the sound of footsteps echoed from the hallway outside the room. Slow, methodical, heavy, the kind of footsteps that didn't belong. I froze, every muscle in my body seizing at the thought that someone was out there. The woman's eyes widened with recognition, her breath catching in her throat. "No, it's him." I didn't need to ask who she meant. The chill that had already settled over me turned to ice in my veins as the door handle rattled, as if someone on the other side was trying to break it down. The footsteps grew louder, closer. I backed away from the door, my heart hammering in my chest. Who is it? What's happening? But the woman didn't answer. Instead, she stood frozen, as if paralyzed by fear, her eyes fixed on the door as if she were waiting for something, or someone, to come through. The door exploded open with a deafening crash. I barely had time to react as the figure stormed into the room. A man. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a dark coat and a cap that obscured most of his features. He stepped into the room like he owned it, his boots thudding against the floor with each heavy step. For a moment, everything seemed to stop. The air stilled. My breathing grew shallow as I tried to process what was happening. The man didn't speak. He didn't need to. His presence was enough to fill the room with a sense of dread that I couldn't shake. And then I saw it, the badge on his chest. Police. For a fleeting moment, I felt a wave of relief. Maybe this was it. Maybe this was the help I had been waiting for. The man who was supposed to make everything better. But then I noticed the look in his eyes. Cold, empty, and I realized too late that this wasn't a cop at all. "Don't look at him," the woman whispered urgently, her voice cracking. "He's not real." But it was too late. The man's gaze locked onto mine, and in that moment I saw it, the truth, the darkness that lay beneath the surface, the glint of malice hidden behind the mask of authority. "I told you," the man said, his voice smooth, but with an edge that made my skin crawl. "You can't run from me." And just like that, I knew. The mirror hadn't been the only thing I had been running from. This man, this thing masquerading as a cop, was a part of it. The darkness, the nightmare that had been chasing me. But I wasn't done yet. I wasn't running anymore. I stood frozen in place, paralyzed by the cold gaze of the man who stood before me. The air felt as though it had thickened to a suffocating level, and the sound of my heart pounding in my ears was deafening. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to run, to escape the nightmare that had closed in around me. But I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. The man's lips curled into a cold, knowing smile, as though he could hear my thoughts, as though he reveled in the terror that gripped me. "You're not getting away this time," he said, his voice low and threatening, like the growl of a predator. "You can't hide. You can't escape." I felt a chill run down my spine, but there was something else beneath the terror. Something that burned through me like a sudden surge of adrenaline. Anger. Defiance. The woman beside me, her hands trembling, whispered again, her words barely audible. "It's all a lie. He's part of it. He's the one who..." The man raised a hand, silencing her with a single, sharp motion. His eyes never left mine. "Stop lying to him," he said, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "You think you can trick him? He knows." He stepped closer, and I instinctively took a step back, my body finally reacting. The air seemed to crackle around him, and the closer he got, the more I could feel the oppressive weight of something dark and ancient pressing down on me. The woman, still standing next to me, trembled, her face contorted in fear. "You don't understand," she said, her voice shaking. "He can't be stopped. He's part of it. The thing from the mirror, the thing that follows. It's all connected." My mind was reeling, trying to make sense of the madness that had taken hold of my life. I couldn't keep up with the confusion, the lies, and the twisted truths that were unraveling in front of me. This man, this thing, was a part of something far worse than I could have ever imagined. "You don't get it, do you?" the man said, his smile growing wider. "You were always meant to be part of this. You were never meant to escape." His words hit me like a punch to the stomach. I felt my blood run cold, the realization slowly sinking in. All this time, I had been running from something I couldn't escape. The man, the mirror, the fear, they were all a part of the same nightmare. A nightmare that had no end. The woman grabbed my arm, her grip surprisingly strong despite the fear in her eyes. "Run," she hissed. "Run. Now." But before I could even react, the man lunged forward with a speed that shouldn't have been possible, grabbing me by the throat and slamming me against the wall. My breath left me in a sharp gasp, my vision blurring as he tightened his grip. "Did you think it would be that easy?" he hissed in my ear. "Did you really think breaking the mirror would make it go away?" I struggled against him, trying to free myself, but it felt like my body was betraying me. My limbs felt heavy, my vision narrowing as the pressure on my throat increased. Desperation surged through me. I couldn't die like this. I couldn't. Suddenly, the woman lunged forward, her hands slamming into the man's back with a force that surprised even him. He staggered for a moment, releasing his grip on me, and I gasped for air, trying to fill my lungs with anything to stave off the growing panic. "You don't belong here." The woman screamed, her voice filled with rage. "You can't have him." The man turned to face her, his eyes burning with fury. But as he did, I saw it. The cracks in his facade. A flicker of something unnatural beneath the surface. Something that was both human and not. The edges of his form seemed to distort, like a broken image on a television screen, glitching in and out of reality. I didn't know what was happening, but I knew it was my chance. The woman had distracted him, and now I had to act fast. I scrambled to my feet, my legs unsteady, my body aching from the force of his attack. The woman grabbed my arm, pulling me toward the door. "Go!" she shouted, her voice strained. Now, I didn't need to be told twice. I broke free from her grasp, darting toward the door. My heart was pounding in my chest, my feet stumbling over the debris of the broken mirror. I reached for the doorknob, yanked it open, and bolted into the hallway. Behind me, I heard the man's voice low and mocking. "You think running will save you? It won't. I'll find you. I always find you. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I just ran, my legs moving faster than I ever thought possible. The hallway stretched endlessly before me, and the only thing I could hear was the pounding of my heart, the sound of my breath rushing in and out of my lungs, and the chilling echoes of the man's voice, growing fainter with each passing second. I didn't stop. I couldn't. The woman's words echoed in my mind as I sprinted down the corridor. He's part of it. He's the one who... I didn't know what she had meant. I didn't know what he had been, what he was. All I knew was that I couldn't let him catch me. I didn't stop running. I didn't stop running. My legs burned, my breath ragged, but I couldn't let up. The sound of my footsteps echoed against the cold, lifeless walls, reverberating like a warning, as if the house itself was trying to pull me back into its depths. I heard a faint noise behind me, a scrape, a soft shuffle of footsteps. My blood ran cold. Was he following me? It was impossible. I had to be imagining it. I didn't dare look back. The hallway twisted and turned, an endless labyrinth that seemed to shift with every step I took. There was no sense to it. I was running in circles. I could feel the weight of the house pressing down on me, the walls closing in, as if it were alive, trapping me within its sprawling confines. I rounded a corner, my heart hammering in my chest, and froze. At the end of the hallway, a figure stood in the shadows, a tall, thin silhouette blocking the way. For a split second, I thought it was him, the man. But then the figure stepped into the light, and I could see it wasn't him at all. It was someone else, a woman. Her face was gaunt, hollow, like she hadn't eaten in days. Her clothes were ragged, and her hair hung limply around her face, wild and unkempt. Her eyes locked onto mine, empty and cold, and something about her gaze sent a shiver down my spine. She didn't say anything at first, just stood there, watching me, waiting. I didn't know if I should approach her or run in the opposite direction. Every instinct in me screamed to get away from her, but there was something in her eyes, something familiar, that kept me rooted to the spot. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had seen her before. But where? When? Her lips parted, and her voice came out in a low, trembling whisper. "You shouldn't be here," she said. None of us should. A chill ran through me, the hairs on the back of my neck standing up. Her words sounded like a warning, but the fear in her voice made it clear that she wasn't trying to help me. She was trying to warn herself. "What do you mean?" I managed to croak, my voice barely audible. She took a step toward me, her eyes scanning the hallway nervously, as if expecting something, or someone, to appear at any moment. "You're in danger," she whispered, her voice growing more frantic. "We all are. You don't understand what this place is. It's not just a house, it's a trap. A trap that's been set for us. And he..." She paused, her gaze flickering to the shadows behind me, "is not who he says he is. He's not a cop. He's something else." I felt the blood drain from my face. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but the words wouldn't come. "The man," she continued, her voice shaking now, "he was part of it. Part of the thing that follows. The thing that can't be escaped. It feeds on fear, on despair. And it's been hunting us for years." I took a step back, my pulse quickening. "What are you talking about? Who is he? What is this thing?" The woman's eyes darted around the hallway once more, and she lowered her voice to a near whisper. "I don't know his real name, but he's been here as long as the house has. He's the one who sets the traps, the one who pulls us in, and once he gets you, once you're marked..." She trailed off, her face twisted in horror. "There's no way out." A sudden, sharp noise echoed from behind me, a door slamming shut, followed by the sound of footsteps, slow and deliberate. My heart skipped a beat. He was close. Too close. go," the woman hissed, her voice breaking with panic. "You have to leave. He's coming. You're not safe here." I turned on my heels, my legs heavy with fear. But before I could take another step, the house seemed to shift again. The walls seemed to stretch and bend, the floor creaking beneath my feet, as if the entire structure was alive, responding to the chaos in the air. I ran harder than I ever had before. My breath was ragged, my body aching, but I couldn't stop. I couldn't look back. Not now. Not when I was so close to. A scream pierced the air, high and desperate, followed by the sickening sound of something heavy slamming into the floor. It was the woman, the one who had tried to warn me. My pulse raced, but I kept moving forward. I couldn't save her. I couldn't risk it. Every part of my body screamed for me to turn around, to help her, but I couldn't. I was already too far gone. There was no time. The hallway opened up into a large room, dimly lit and covered in dust. A mirror, cracked and broken, stood at the far end of the room. The mirror. I felt a surge of panic. No, not again. I couldn't let it trap me here. I couldn't let it. But then I saw it, the reflection in the shattered glass. A figure stood behind me, its face obscured by shadows. Its form was long and thin, its movements jerky, as if it were struggling to maintain its shape. And there, in the reflection, I saw the man, the one who had followed me from the very beginning. And he was smiling. I turned around, but he was gone. There was no one behind me. My breath came in ragged gasps. What was happening? Was I losing my mind, or was this really happening? Suddenly, the door to the room slammed shut, locking me inside. I was trapped. The room was cold, too cold. The air felt thick, suffocating, as if it was pulling all the warmth out of me. I turned, my back pressed against the door, my heart thumping wildly in my chest. The mirror in front of me was shattered, its broken pieces reflecting fragmented images, distorted, twisted. But it wasn't the mirror I was focused on now. It was the feeling. I couldn't shake the sensation that something was in here with me. Something that wasn't just an illusion. Something that was watching me. I glanced at the cracked reflection again. The shards of glass jutted out from the frame like jagged teeth, casting sharp shadows that twisted unnaturally in the dim light. I needed to get out of here. The door was locked, but I had to find another way. There had to be an exit. There had to be a way out of this nightmare. But as I stepped forward, my foot caught on something. I looked down and saw a piece of broken glass on the floor, its sharp edges catching the light. My hand instinctively reached down to pick it up, a strange compulsion pulling at me. I hesitated. I wasn't sure why I had even grabbed it, but something told me I needed it. For what? To protect myself. To fight whatever was after me. I shoved the shard of glass into my pocket, the cold, smooth surface sending a shiver through my fingertips. It felt wrong. It felt dangerous. But what wasn't dangerous in this house? A low creak echoed from the far side of the room, followed by a slow, deliberate dragging sound. The noise was faint at first, but it grew louder, closer, until I could feel the vibrations under my feet. My heart jumped in my chest. The mirror. I whipped around, my breath catching in my throat. There, in the broken glass, I could see him. The man. But this time, he wasn't just in the reflection. He was standing behind me, his face just out of view, hovering at the edge of my peripheral vision. I didn't dare turn around to face him. I couldn't. He was too close. I could feel the oppressive weight of him in the air, as if he were pressing against me, suffocating me. I forced myself to breathe, my mind racing. What was he waiting for? What was he going to do? His voice, cold and smooth, broke the silence. "You can't run anymore?" I flinched, my hands trembling. His voice was so familiar, so unsettling, like a memory I couldn't place. He had said the same thing before, hadn't he? That night when he had first come to my door. "You're mine now," he continued, his voice dripping with malice. "You always have been." I turned to face him, my body moving on its own, driven by a mixture of fear and defiance. My eyes locked onto him. The man stood there, his dark silhouette looming in the dim light. He was tall, impossibly so, with limbs that stretched far too long, too thin. His face was obscured in shadow, but his eyes were the worst part. They were black, hollow, like empty voids that swallowed everything in their path. I didn't know what to say. I couldn't speak. My throat was dry, constricted, like it had been sealed shut. But I couldn't just stand here, waiting for him to do whatever it was he had planned. "What do you want from me?" I managed to croak, my voice barely a whisper. His lips curled into a smile. It wasn't the kind of smile that showed warmth or amusement. It was a smile of pure, unadulterated malice. "I already told you." He stepped forward, his movements fluid, too fluid, like he wasn't quite human. "You've been chosen. You can't escape this place, not anymore." My heart pounded in my chest. Every instinct screamed for me to run, to fight, to do anything to get away from him, but my legs refused to move. It was as if my body was paralyzed by fear, weighed down by an invisible force. "No," I whispered, shaking my head. "I won't be a part of this. I won't." "You have no choice," he interrupted, his voice cutting through the air like a knife. "The moment you stepped into this house, you were already part of it. Part of me. You think you can escape. There's nowhere to run. There's nowhere to hide." I took a step back, my hands trembling. But as I did, something caught my eye. The shattered mirror. The pieces of glass were beginning to move, sliding slowly across the floor as if drawn by some invisible force. They shifted, coming together to form a shape. A figure. The same figure. The man. But this time, it wasn't a reflection. It was real. The shards of glass had formed his body, his limbs stretching and twisting unnaturally, until it was almost fully formed. And then, it spoke. "You can't leave. We won't let you." I stumbled backward, my breath coming in shallow gasps. My mind was reeling. What was happening? Was I losing my grip on reality? Was I seeing things? "No," I gasped, my voice trembling. "No, this can't be real. You can't." But the man in front of me only smiled again, his face stretching unnaturally wide, his features contorting like they were made of wax. "Yes," he said, his voice a low hiss. "It's all real. It's always been real." The room felt smaller now, the walls closing in, pressing me toward him. My pulse raced, panic clawing at my throat. I had to get out of here. I had to find a way. I turned toward the door, but before I could reach it, I heard the sound of footsteps. Heavy, dragging, slow, but purposeful. The woman, the one who had tried to warn me, she was back. And she wasn't alone. I didn't have time to process what I was seeing. My body moved on its own, driven by sheer survival instinct. The woman, she was back just as the man had said. But she wasn't alone. There was something else with her. Something wrong. I didn't even think. I turned toward the door, my hand outstretched, but before I could grab the handle, it rattled, and the woman's voice cut through the air, sharp and frantic. "You can't leave!" she screamed, her voice cracked with desperation. Hell. But she was cut off. The door slammed shut with an ear-splitting bang, the impact shaking the entire room. I stumbled backward, my heart leaping into my throat as the world seemed to tilt on its axis. I looked around, my mind racing. There was no way out. The only way out was blocked, and the woman, whoever she was standing just behind me, her eyes wide with terror. But it wasn't her that had me frozen in place. It was the figure emerging from the hallway. The figure I had seen in the reflection. The one made of shattered glass. It wasn't human. It couldn't have been. It moved like smoke, flowing and shifting, as if it were both there and not. Its form was constantly changing, rippling in unnatural ways. The jagged edges of the glass that made up its body reflected light in strange, fractured patterns, like a grotesque mosaic, each shard splitting reality into twisted fragments. The woman was shouting something, but I couldn't hear her over the pounding of blood in my ears. The air had thickened, and my chest felt tight as though the room were closing in around me. I backed up, bumping into the shattered mirror, its pieces biting into my skin. The pain was a brief distraction from the horror of the moment, but it didn't help. The figure was getting closer, its form stretching unnaturally long, like it was trying to force itself into the world. I turned toward the woman. "What is that thing? What the hell is it?" She didn't answer immediately. Her gaze flickered between the figure and me, and I could see the fear in her eyes, the way she was trying to hold herself together, to keep her composure. But the cracks in her facade were showing. "It's him," she whispered, barely audible. "It's always been him. He's not human." I shook my head. "What do you mean? What is he?" Before she could answer, the glass figure let out a low, guttural sound, almost like a growl. It was the sound of something ancient, something that had no place in this world. Its presence seemed to distort everything around it, the air shimmering with unnatural energy. My heart skipped a beat as I realized something. This thing wasn't just a creature. It was a manifestation. A reflection of something darker, something that lived in this house. It wasn't bound by the same rules that governed reality, and it was coming for me. I wanted to scream, to run, but my body refused to obey. My mind screamed at me to move, to do something, anything. But it was as if I was paralyzed, locked in place by fear. The figure reached out, its hands stretching toward me, the glass shards shifting and clicking together like the sound of bones breaking. And then, just as its fingers brushed the air in front of me, a sudden voice cut through the tension. "You shouldn't have come here." I whipped around, my breath catching in my throat as I saw the man, the real one. He was standing just behind me, blocking the door, a twisted smile playing on his lips. His eyes, those black, hollow eyes, were fixed on me, watching me with that same sickening gaze. "You never should have come," he repeated, his voice cold, almost casual. It wasn't just the way he spoke. It was the feel of him. The air around him crackled with a sinister energy, like he was an anchor to this place, tied to its dark, twisted history. The woman beside me seemed to recognize him, her face blanching as she stepped back. She was terrified. She was terrified of him. But why? "He's not what you think he is," she whispered, her voice shaking. "He's not just a man. He's part of this place, this house." I turned back to the figure, then to her. "What do you mean? What the hell is going on here? Who are you really?" She opened her mouth, but before she could answer, the man in front of me spoke again. "You don't get to ask the questions," he said. "You never did." My body was frozen, but my mind was racing. Something was wrong. I didn't understand what any of this meant, but I could feel the walls closing in. The air was thick with something ancient and oppressive. It felt like the house itself was alive, breathing, shifting, changing. I glanced at the woman again, desperately searching for answers. "You're here for him, aren't you?" I said. "You're here to stop him." She shook her head slowly, her eyes wide. I can't," I tried, "but it's too late for me, and it's too late for you too. You should have listened to me." I wanted to scream. I wanted to demand answers, to understand how I could escape, how I could make it out of here alive. But the man's voice stopped me. "You're not leaving," he said, his smile widening. And just like that, I realized the horrifying truth. This wasn't a house. This was a trap, a prison, and I had been caught. The man's smile spread wider, but it wasn't a smile that invited comfort. It was cold, predatory. His black eyes never left mine as he stepped closer, blocking any possible escape. The woman beside me seemed to shrink back, her body pressed against the wall. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Her eyes darted between me and the figure in the hallway, her breath quickening. The figure, the one made of glass, had stopped moving. But its presence still loomed in the room, the air heavy with its malevolent energy. I could feel its weight pressing down on me, as if it were waiting for something. I could hardly breathe. Every instinct in my body screamed for me to run, to fight, to do something, but I was frozen. I couldn't take my eyes off the man standing before me. The suffocating sense of dread wrapped around me, tightening with every passing second. "You shouldn't have come here," he repeated, his voice low and even, like he was speaking to a child. "This place, it doesn't let people go. And now you're part of it." I glanced at the woman, who was shaking, her arms wrapped tightly around herself as though trying to hold on to something. "What does that mean?" I managed to choke out. "What is this place? What's happening?" She opened her mouth, but the man cut her off before she could speak. "You want answers, don't you?" he asked, his tone mocking. "But there's no answer that will help you now. You've made your choice." "My choice?" I repeated, feeling the weight of those words sink in. "What the hell are you talking about?" The man took a step closer, his shoes clicking on the floor with each movement. "This house doesn't care about your questions. It doesn't care about your fear. It only cares about one thing: who belongs." He looked at the woman beside me, a twisted look of pity crossing his face. "She doesn't belong. Not anymore. Not for a long time." The woman flinched at his words as if struck. "Stop," she whispered, barely audible. "Please." But he didn't stop. He was in control. I could see that now. He always had been. I turned to the woman, desperate. "What did you mean when you said it was too late for me? What happens now? What is this place?" She didn't answer right away. She was staring at the floor, tears brimming in her eyes. Finally, she looked up at me, her gaze full of sorrow. "You should have left when you had the chance," she said, voice shaking. "But you didn't. You stayed. And now you're just like the rest of us." The man stepped forward, and I instinctively backed up, pressing myself against the shattered mirror. The fragments of glass bit into my skin, but the pain barely registered as I turned to face him. "Like the rest of you?" I asked, dread curling in my stomach. "What does that mean?" He gave a single, humorless laugh, the sound echoing around the room like the chime of a bell tolling for the dead. "You think this is a house. You think it's a place. But it's a thing. A creature. A parasite." I swallowed hard. "A parasite. Yes," he said, his voice laced with dark amusement. "It feeds on people, on their fear, on their pain, on their choices. You made the choice to stay, and now..." He looked at the woman, his smile turning sadistic. "No, you belong here. Just like her." I wanted to scream. I wanted to fight, to claw my way out of this nightmare. But I knew deep down that I was trapped. There was no way out. Not anymore. The woman gave a strangled sob. "You have to make a choice," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You can't stay here. It will consume you." I stared at her, my heart pounding. "What choice?" She looked at the man, then back at me. "There's always a choice, but it's a hard one." The figure in the hallway stirred, its shape shifting, as though it were growing restless, waiting for something. Its glass form clicked and clattered, and for a moment I thought it was going to move again. But it didn't. It stayed frozen, its presence suffocating. The man looked at me with those black eyes, as though measuring me, deciding something. "You have one chance to escape," he said, his voice cold. "One chance to make it out of here alive. But it's not going to be easy. If you want to leave, you have to choose." "Choose," I repeated. "Choose what?" He held up his hand, and a dark shadow seemed to ripple around him. "You can stay. You can join us. Become part of this house, a part of the thing it's become. Or you can try to fight it." But know this, it will never let you go. I felt a cold sweat break out on the back of my neck. What happens if I choose to fight it? The man's smile deepened, his eyes glinting with malice. Then it will take everything from you. Your mind, your body, your soul. There's nothing left once it's done. I turned to the woman. But she was staring at the floor, her hands trembling in her lap. Her face was pale, her eyes hollow. She didn't look like she had any fight left in her. Please, she whispered. Don't fight it. Just let it take you. It's the only way. I turned back to the man, my mind racing. My pulse hammered in my ears, and I could feel the tension in the room, thick and suffocating. The figure in the hallway was still waiting, its glass body shimmering in the low light. I looked at the door, then back at him. There was no way out. The man tilted his head slightly, as though he could read my mind. Time's running out, he said. Make your choice. And in that moment, I realized something terrible. There was no escaping. The house had already chosen for me. The weight of the moment pressed down on me. I stood frozen in place, my mind racing, but my body unable to move. The man before me. The one with the black eyes, the one who had led me to this place. His words echoed in my mind, reverberating like a drumbeat. Make your choice. I glanced at the woman beside me, whose body was trembling in quiet despair. Her gaze was distant, hollow, as though she had already accepted what was happening to her. I could feel the cold air of inevitability swirling around us, thick and suffocating, making it hard to think, hard to breathe. The glass figure, still motionless, seemed to loom larger, as though waiting, watching, its unblinking stare piercing through me. No, I couldn't accept it, couldn't just roll over and let this thing consume me. Let it swallow me whole like it had done to her. I turned to face the man, every part of me burning with defiance. I won't be like her, I said through clenched teeth. I won't let this place win. His lips curled into a slow, sadistic grin. You think you have a choice. He laughed, a low, mocking sound that sent a shiver up my spine. You're already part of it, just like her. You're trapped, and you'll be just like all the others who've come before you. I shook my head, fighting the rising sense of hopelessness. No, I won't let it happen. I'll find a way out. He narrowed his eyes at me, almost as if considering my words. But then, without another word, he stepped aside. And that's when I saw it, something had changed in the room. The walls, which had once been so steady, so fixed in place, now seemed to pulse, as if the house itself was alive, breathing. The air was thick with the smell of decay and mold, and I could almost hear the walls groaning, shifting, as if the building was shifting and changing to its own grotesque desires. The figure in the hallway moved, slowly, purposefully. Its glass body creaked and cracked, the sound sickening in the silence that enveloped us. For the first time, it stepped forward, its long, fragile limbs stretching out like spider legs. I could feel its presence in my chest, a weight pushing me back, forcing me to retreat. It moved closer, the glass scraping against the floor, with a screech that sent a ripple of nausea through my gut. No, I screamed, backing away. I wasn't ready. I couldn't be. I couldn't let it touch me, couldn't let it. Suddenly, the woman beside me was no longer standing. She was on her knees, her hands clasped together in front of her, her head bowed. She wasn't looking at me anymore. She wasn't even looking at the man. Her eyes were vacant, empty. She was already lost. And that's when I realized she had already made her choice. The realization hit me like a slap in the face. She had chosen to surrender. She had given in to whatever force was behind this house, this creature, this nightmare. And in doing so, she had sealed her fate. She was a part of it now. Her body, her soul, her very essence, just like the others before her. I had one choice. Only one. I felt the cold fingers of dread wrap tighter around my throat as I looked back at the man. his smile widening at the fear that I couldn't hide anymore. "You've already made it," he said, his voice cold and cutting through me like ice. "You chose the moment you stepped inside this house." "No," I whispered, shaking my head, my throat tight with terror. "No, I didn't." He stepped closer. So close I could feel the air around me shift with his movements. "You did. You walked in here. You chose to stay. And now you'll never leave." The glass figure was almost upon us now. I could see the twisted, angular shape of its form, the jagged edges of its broken glass body seeming to shift and writhe like something alive. Its limbs reached out, its fingers elongated, their tips curving like claws. I stumbled backward, heart pounding. My legs were trembling with fear, but my body refused to move fast enough. There was nowhere to go, nowhere to hide. The man's voice cut through the panic like a knife. "You don't get it, do you?" His words were sharp, cruel. "You never really had a choice. The house chose you." The glass figure reached for me, its sharp fingers brushing my arm, sending an electric shock of cold through my body. I screamed. But the sound was swallowed by the weight of the air, by the suffocating presence of the house itself. The world blurred as I felt myself being pulled toward the figure, toward that cold, glass-like embrace. And then, just as suddenly as it began, everything stopped. The figure froze in place, its clawed fingers hanging in mid-air, inches away from my skin. I could feel its cold presence, but it didn't move. I looked back at the man. His expression had shifted. Gone was the sadistic grin, replaced with something darker, something more dangerous. "You're not leaving," he said, his voice low and steady. "Not unless you make the right choice." The world around me began to shift again, the walls closing in, the house twisting, as if it were waiting for me to decide. There was only one way out, and the house was telling me. The choice had always been mine to make, but could I make it in time? Could I defy the thing that had been waiting for me from the moment I stepped through the door? I didn't know. But one thing was certain, whatever happened next, I would not let it take me without a fight. The air was thick with the smell of mold and rot. The walls seemed to breathe, exhaling a chill that wrapped around my bones like a shroud. I could feel the weight of the house pressing in on me, the structure itself alive, its creaks and groans reverberating in my chest. The man, no, whatever he was, stood silently behind me, his shadow stretching long across the floor. I didn't know what I was running from anymore. The glass figure loomed at the end of the hall, its jagged form almost monstrous in its stillness, as if it were waiting for me to make a move. But it was more than just the figure. It was everything. The house, the people. The way it felt like I was trapped in a nightmare where there was no escape. And worst of all, the man's words echoed in my mind, like a constant, rhythmic reminder. "You chose this. You'll never leave." I looked back toward the woman who had been beside me. She was no longer kneeling. She wasn't even there anymore. Just a faint outline of her silhouette in the distance, fading away into the fog that had settled in the corners of the house. She had made her choice, and now she was a part of the house, swallowed whole by whatever force had taken root here. But I wasn't ready to make mine. I couldn't. My heart was hammering in my chest, but my legs felt frozen in place. The door at the far end of the hallway caught my eye, the one that had always been there, but never quite seemed within reach. It stood alone, untouched by time, untouched by the decay that had consumed everything else. It was the only thing that hadn't changed, the only thing that still seemed real, and it was my only hope. I ran. I didn't think about it. I didn't hesitate. My feet pounded against the floor, a frantic rhythm that only grew louder as I approached the door. The sound of my heartbeat filled my ears, drowning out everything else, the creaking of the house, the whispers that had started to seep through the walls, the quiet, mocking chuckle of the man behind me. I reached for the door handle, my hand trembling, but I didn't stop. I yanked it open and stumbled inside. For a moment, everything went still. I couldn't hear anything. The house seemed to have stopped breathing. The air was colder now, but somehow emptier. I was standing in a room, but the walls were bare, the floor smooth and black, like something had wiped it clean. The silence was overwhelming. Then the door slammed shut behind me. I spun around, heart racing, breath catching in my throat. The man had followed me in. His silhouette loomed in the doorway, blocking out the light from the hallway, casting an eerie shadow across the room. "This is it," he said, his voice low, almost mournful. "There's no going back now. You've crossed the threshold." I stared at him, trying to steady my breath. "What do you want from me?" He didn't answer. Instead, he stepped forward. Slowly, deliberately, his footsteps echoing in the silent room, his eyes, black, empty, locked onto mine, and I could feel a shiver run down my spine. "I don't want anything from you," he said finally, his voice tinged with something I couldn't quite place. "You're the one who wanted to leave." The truth of his words struck me like a punch to the gut. This whole time, I had been fighting to escape, fighting to leave this place. But now, standing in the center of the room, I realized something I had always known: there was no way out. I had always known I would have to face whatever it was that kept me here. The man continued, his voice barely more than a whisper. "The house will always take what it wants. You can't fight it. You can't escape." I stepped back, fear coursing through my veins. But something else, something dark and bitter, began to rise in me. I was so tired. Tired of running, tired of pretending I had control when everything around me was slipping away. Tired of the constant weight of dread that never seemed to leave. "Why?" I managed, my voice shaking. "Why are you doing this? Why to me?" He tilted his head slightly, a curious look crossing his face. "Because you chose to stay." I wanted to scream, to lash out, to do anything to break free from this feeling. But I couldn't. Then I saw it. The door, the one that had been sealed behind me, began to open on its own. Slowly, deliberately, the hinges creaked, and a shaft of dim light poured into the room. I stepped forward, hesitant, unsure whether to trust it. For a moment, I felt something stir in my chest, a flicker of hope. Maybe this was the way out. Maybe the house was offering me a chance to escape, to leave everything behind, to forget. But the moment I stepped toward the door, the man's voice stopped me. "You really think it's that easy?" he asked, his tone a mixture of amusement and pity. "You think you can just walk away from this place, from everything that's been done?" The door slammed shut. I stumbled back. My breath caught in my throat as the room seemed to shrink around me. The walls began to shift again, groaning as if the house itself was alive, hungry. The ground trembled beneath my feet. The man was gone, but the air felt thick with his presence, with the weight of everything he had said. It wasn't over. I wasn't free. Not yet. I looked around the room. Panic setting in once more, but something else was rising inside of me. A spark of determination. Maybe I didn't have the answers. Maybe I didn't know what would happen next. But I knew this: I wasn't going down without a fight. The room seemed to pulse with an energy I couldn't comprehend. The walls closed in, not physically, but in the way a person might feel as if they were suffocating, even though the space around them was technically vast. The air was thick, sharp, like it was alive, testing me, pressing in on all sides. The sound of my breathing was loud, too loud, but it was the only thing I could focus on as the floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet. I reached out for the door, but my fingers passed through it like smoke, like it was made of nothing but the faintest illusion. I jerked back, my heart pounding in my chest. I was trapped. The laughter began, soft at first, a low rumble from somewhere deep within the walls. It was his laughter. The man. The one who had once told me he was a cop, a protector of sorts, but was nothing of the kind. His voice echoed from every corner of the room now, growing louder, more mocking with each passing second. "You've always been in the dark," he whispered, the words seeping into my mind like poison. "You've never known the truth." "Not really. All these months, you've been following a trail that wasn't even real. Every step you took brought you closer to me, and closer to the house." I spun around, my pulse racing. The silence was gone. His voice was everywhere, reverberating in my skull, twisting everything I had ever known into something unrecognizable. The house was alive with it. The room seemed to contract and expand in waves like it was breathing. Inhale, exhale, slow, deliberate, waiting for something. What was I supposed to do? "You think you're special." The voice came again, now sharp, full of disdain. "That you're the one who will escape this. That you'll be the exception to the rule." I took a step back, my mind reeling. The house, this nightmare, it had always been about control. I had never been in control. I had been led, manipulated, and now, there was no clear path left, no clear way out. The man's figure materialized in the center of the room, his form dark and blurred, like he was made of shadows. His eyes, hollow and black, locked onto mine, and I felt something inside me twist. His presence felt suffocating, like I couldn't breathe, like the weight of everything, every choice I had made, was pressing down on me. "You're here because you made a choice," he said, his voice dripping with venom. "You didn't fight hard enough to leave. You let yourself be consumed." A flash of memory, of all the times I had tried to run, to escape, only to find myself back here. A sickening realization hit me like a tidal wave. This was the culmination of everything. The house wasn't just a place. It was a force, a thing that had been feeding off my fear, my uncertainty for months. And the man, he wasn't a cop. He was something else entirely. "Are you ready to choose?" he asked, stepping closer. His voice dropped to a chilling whisper. "The final choice. You can stay or you can join me." I stumbled back, my head spinning. Was this it? Was this the moment where everything came crashing down? The walls seemed to shift again, but this time they parted. A doorway opened in the center of the room. A long, narrow passageway, just beyond the threshold. It beckoned with an eerie light, faint cold, but there. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt something shift in the air, a glimmer of hope. But it wasn't a true escape, not in the way I had hoped. The man's voice interrupted my thoughts. "You'll never be free of it," he said softly, almost pityingly. "You'll walk through that door, but you'll never leave the house. You'll never leave me. Not really." I didn't know what was true anymore. All I had known was this place, these endless twists and turns. But that door, it was the only thing that was real, the only thing that hadn't been part of this nightmare. I couldn't stay here. Not in the suffocating silence. Not under the oppressive weight of his gaze. This was my chance. I made the decision before I even realized it. I bolted toward the door. The man let out a low chuckle, almost amused. "You think it'll be that simple?" I didn't care. I ran. My feet slapped against the floor as I sprinted through the doorway. But as I passed through the threshold, everything stopped. The hallway was cold, so cold that my breath formed clouds in front of me. The air felt dense, thick, as if I were underwater. I spun around, expecting the house to be behind me, but there was nothing. It was just empty, quiet. Too quiet. I exhaled a shaky breath. This was it. The house was gone. The man was gone. But something felt wrong. There was no victory, no relief. Only the hollow ache of a choice that had already been made for me. I turned, looking down the narrow corridor before me. It stretched on into the darkness, endless. There was no end. There was no beginning. It just went on and on. The house had claimed me. And now, it was all I knew. But I wasn't alone. I could still feel him, his presence lingering in the corners of the hallway, in the chill of the air. And I realized, with a terrible, sinking certainty, that the house had not let me go. It had only given me one final choice: to stay, or to join him. And as I took a step forward into the dark, the door slammed shut behind me, sealing my fate.